putting AP in Mike Jones and Derek.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. I always have to let David do something weird before we start. Today, we are live once again on the most watched show in the world on Apostate Prophet's channel. And today, we have a very special episode. Today, we are going to find out if it is acceptable to marry children and if it's acceptable to marry babies. This will be very important. So this is not something that I'm saying. We all know the Islamic story on this. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were told just a few days ago that according to Islam, it is okay to marry an infant, right? And to have sexual intercourse with her as soon as she starts showing signs of maturity.
I was shocked. I did not think he was going to say that, but apparently, yes. Daniel Hakikachu said it. Yeah, if someone goes through precocious puberty, which can happen as early as 11 months, according to a case study that I have here, they can be married off and the marriage can be consummated as soon as they start showing signs of puberty. And wow, but yeah, that's what I heard.
I didn't hear this part. No matter the age, period.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I thought it was bad already, but you know,
wow. You haven't seen anything, man. Daniel Hakikachu is here to enlighten everybody about what Islam really is and to bring everyone back to the folds of true Islam, to spread the true message of Islam and convince everyone why everyone should become a Muslim, of course, with beautiful things like these.
AP, if you want to, I got the study. If you want to I put it in the bottom there. If you want to just show everyone that I have this actual study, because I didn't get a chance to mention it, but here it is. An 11-month-old girl with central precocious puberty. So yeah, it does happen where as young as less than 1 year, a girl started displaying signs of puberty, including bleeding. It's mentioned right there in the abstract. So there's a study, guys. I wasn't making it up.
The weirdest thing about this is that, the Quran says you can marry them before they reach puberty. You can marry and have sex with them before puberty. So it's like as horrible as what Daniel is saying is, the Quran is actually worse. So everyone, don't forget, throughout this entire discussion, when you're listening to Daniel Hakikachu and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is disgusting, he's actually morally superior to what the Quran is saying. The Quran, Surah 65, verse 4 says, according to that verse, you can marry, divorce. You marry, have sex with, divorce, then pass on to another man a girl who that guy can then marry her, have sex with her, and so on, all before she's ever reached puberty. And so Daniel's actually a step above by saying, hey, at least wait till she's reached puberty.
I actually want to show this once. I think this was one of the most important parts of the debate. This was in the cross-examination. Of course, we can come to that later, but I want to bring this up here because I personally found it very important and thought it was great that Michael actually put him on the spot and asked him these questions. So I recorded a short clip of that moment here that we are talking about. So this is very important to watch. This is the part where Mike confronts Daniel, and he actually says that it's okay to marry and have sex with a child as early as the age of 5.
Just to be clear, this was the hardest part of the debate for me to keep my cool. I almost lashed out of it because I have a daughter, and it was very hard for me to keep my emotions down here.
We could see the whole time that you were having trouble containing yourself. You are very visibly uncomfortable.
Just so everyone knows, he was like that last year at the debates when he was hearing some of the stuff that Muslims were saying. He looked like he was ready to jump up out of his chair. He was just sitting in the audience, but he looked like he was about to jump up out of his chair. He was so enraged at some of the stuff that was being said last year. And so, IP's a very sensitive guy.
Yeah. By the way, very interesting stuff. I have pointed this out before, but Daniel Hakikachu's laptop, he says Predator, and everybody.
The moment your own laptop turns on you, guys, you got to be aware of this guy here. Everyone, listen, this guy's a predator.
Hey,
I've seen what he's been searching.
I've already seen people saying, "Man, I have that laptop now. I got to get rid of it."
This is the first thing that I noticed as soon as I was watching it live, and as soon as he started his opening speech, I was like, "Wait a minute, what does that say?"
Acer, that's an Acer Predator gamer laptop. But now, Acer stock plummets after being used to defend child brides.
Dude. Oh boy. Anyway, let's watch this. Let's watch this clip here. I think it is just very.
As soon as she's showing signs of an imminent fertility, if you can start, that's something that is explained evolutionarily. I don't believe in evolution. I know that you do, but they explain it that this is an adaptation, because if you can start fertilizing a female as soon as she's showing signs of an imminent fertility, the period, menarche, then that will maximize, because you secured the female right at the beginning, the start of when she will potentially.
But you can still have sex before you start maximizing fertility, right?
When the body is physically mature, according to Islamic.
So, just to have that first part ready, Daniel Kikichu here clearly says, and we can all see Mike is again feeling very uncomfortable about this, says that as soon as a girl starts showing signs of maturity, which means, a bleeding or otherwise,
before bleeding.
Before bleeding, okay.
He's saying before bleeding. And I've seen other Muslims do this as well. They're saying, no, because puberty really starts before the ovulating and menstruating happens. They start to grow pubic hair, their breasts start to grow. And that's when you can start having sex with them. Okay, that blows your whole argument out of the water that child brides are necessary for maximizing fertility.
Noticed that.
Because you're having sex with them before they can even have children. This is about your sadistic pleasure and using girls for, your patriarchal pleasure you want to. It's disgusting. But so they're shooting themselves in the foot when they admit this. They're absolutely shooting themselves in the foot.
So something you said there that I thought about before even coming into this discussion tonight was when you have your role model, your peak figure, the way you understand him is that he marries a 6-year-old, consummates it at 9 sexually, and that this is the model in which we should be able to mimic and act for all time. This is an interesting point, because the way I imagine it is, if he is an Islamic presuppositionalist, let's just put it that way, which means I imagine many Muslims are the same way, that the model of Muhammad should be what we all follow, then anything he can find that helps back up his claim to support and defend what the prophet did is going to be what he'll use. And then this one you just brought up backfires against him, because he's pointing out like, hey, it's all here. Look at the reproduction models. Look at the numbers for reproduction and civilization. And then it's like, but you're saying you're having sex with them years before they can even make a child. That'll ruin science. Science has shown that'll ruin the chances of that girl ever being able to produce.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many things that work against what he's saying.
That's exactly as it is. So Daniel Kikichu is somebody who is an ultra traditionalist. He has to stick to everything that Islam says in its fundamentals and oppose any kind of deviation from it. And as such, go ahead.
And we can get into this later, but he constantly, preparing for this debate, he constantly thinks Christianity is just diet Islam. That is just demonstrably false. He's always like, you just abandoned Christianity for liberal Western values. No, you don't understand Christianity. If you read scholars like, Rodney Stark, Tom Holland, Robert Woodbury, there's a great book Daniel should read called A Secular Age, written by Charles Taylor. And Charles Taylor basically points out modern secularism comes out of Christian ethics. It was these modern deists, enlightened deists, that took things they got from Christianity, that focus on equality, that focus on care, and they just tried to divorce it from its Christian base and create a system without the Christian beliefs. So he's just absolutely wrong that secularism is eroding traditional Christianity, or that it's like vehemently opposed to it. It's not. It's actually like, as Charles Taylor used, it's a corruption of Christianity. It took good things it got from Christianity and then took it in directions that Taylor and other Christians like myself don't agree with. But so Daniel doesn't realize that how different Christian ethics and Christians' history is from Islam. They're vehemently different in multiple ways, and he doesn't realize that.
He has a view that is very common among Muslims, which is that Muslims have this very ignorant idea of not really understanding how what Christianity is and how it works, how Christianity defines morality. So they think Christianity was at some point just like Islam with all the rules, like a list of rules. But then Christians became lazy and corrupted their religion and abandoned it, and that's why they are now like the liberals. And so somebody like him should be aware that this is a distorted view of Christianity, that this is an ignorant view. Nevertheless, he holds it and pushes this idea, and that makes me think he either doesn't know or he knows and just appeals to that whole Muslim sentiment. And I'm caught somewhere in between.
You're right. Yeah. You want to keep playing? Go for it.
Yeah, let's go.
You know what precocious puberty is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, where is it?
It means starting puberty unusually early, like beyond averages.
Is there anything in Islam that prevents you from a man marrying a 5-year-old that started precocious puberty?
No, marriage can happen, you can arrange a marriage even as an infant, but that doesn't mean that sex is allowed.
Could a man?
So here, what is the idea is this existed in Islam. You can arrange a marriage at any age. There is no limit. You can also find this confirmed in traditionalist Islamic sources. If you just go online and Google the traditionalist view, marriage can happen at any age. There is no specified minimum age. But what Daniel Hikikichu here says is that just sex is not allowed. So you can marry an infant, but you cannot have sex with that infant.
I just feel good that I don't even know what that word meant until I watched this debate. Makes me feel really good as a human.
Yeah. Which one? You mean
the word he's using about what do you know what this means to Daniel Hikikichu?
Oh, precocious,
and he's like, he stops for a second, but he's like, hold on, I know exactly what that means.
And I would like to personally thank.
I'm the master of that topic.
I like to personally thank my wife, because when I was preparing for this debate, we were listening to him talk about this stuff, and she goes, "What would he say about precocious puberty?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And so I started researching, and this was like in December. And I was like, oh my God. So I started writing up my questions right then and there for him.
Now, Daniel Hikikichu is currently watching this. We know.
Hi, Daniel.
He will now say, look, Mike admits that he gets advice for the debate from his wife, from a woman.
Yes, I do, because I treat her as my equal. She's my equal.
Yeah. How can she be an equal? She's a woman.
Because,
women are naturally...
Galatians chapter 3, Genesis 1, 1 Corinthians 7. The wife has authority over the husband's body, as the husband has authority over the wife's body. We're equal. So you should study Christianity.
Yeah, Daniel.
And have a marriage to a 5-year-old consummated if she started precocious puberty?
If she starts showing signs of physical maturity, then yes, that's permissible.
Okay, let's have that again here.
Old enough to bleed, old enough to breed. You know,
question is,
for years I've been saying, and keep in mind, that's not even what you get from the Quran. The Quran refers to marrying, having sex with, and divorcing girls before they've ever reached puberty. But
you showed that in your recent debate.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's like 14 centuries worth of commentators agree that that's exactly what it's saying. And the historical background, that's specifically what was asked that Surah 65:4 is answering. As people started raising their hands going, what about girls who are too young to have a monthly menstrual cycle? What about girls who are too young for puberty? And his response was, oh, okay, since they don't have a monthly menstrual cycle, wait 3 months. So if you're divorcing them before someone else can marry them. So again, a girl could have 4 or 5 different husbands all before she's ever reached puberty, according to the Quran. So again, as horrifying as Daniel's position is, it's better than what you get from the Quran. I think he's adopting the position of later legal schools of Islam, where they would, you're trying to zero in on the time of a monthly menstrual cycle and so on. But it's just interesting because for years I point out that a lot of the Muslims, their position seems to be old enough to bleed, old enough to breed. And then, oh, how dare you say that, David? You liar. That's not our position at all. And as soon as their guys start shouting it, they're alhamdulillah, so brilliant. Great defense of exactly what David Wood has been saying for 15 years that we kept calling him a liar for.
That's the thing. I have been thinking about this the whole time. Same issue. He talks about puberty and signs of maturity as a barrier, and as a milestone to look out for. And once that is inside, you can go and have sex with that little child. But the thing is, if he wants to go to the fundamentals, to the Quran and the Hadith, there is not even such a detail anywhere to find. This is just he's still, I would say, I don't know, moderate in comparison to the very traditionalist and literalist view that he is supposed to be part of. I guess he cannot go hardcore literalist and hardcore traditionalist, which is why he still adds a little bit of an invention and says, at least there should be signs of maturity or signs of puberty.
Yeah, AP, I want to say that I'm going to get messages after from angry Muslims that are like, how could you side with atheists on this issue? Don't you understand how depraved atheism is? You should be siding with your fellow theists like Muslims. And let me just say to those morons out there, I don't see any atheists like Derek or Ridvan getting up there and arguing in favor of something as horrible as child marriage. Okay, we have a lot of agreement in terms of ethics here against this pure evil. If there was a group of Christians that believed they had to commit child sacrifice to God, and there was a group of atheists on the outside with AK-47s that saying we're going to go into their temple and rescue the children, I join with the atheists.
Right.
Okay, let's just get something clear. If there are theists that are going to push horrible things like what Daniel pushes, like child marriage, slavery, sexual slavery, murdering apostates, yeah, you better believe I'm going to join side with the atheists against this abominable practice, this abominable religion you're promoting.
See, Christian apologist admits that he would rather side with atheists.
Clip it.
Hey, by the way, there are some hilarious comments over here. Om Girl said, "I can see Daniel's ankle, and I'm on fire with lust." House of Hikmah said, "If there's fluff on the muff, then she's old enough."
Oh my God!
Isn't that
was from Ali?
G?
That was from Ali G. Yeah,
that's from Ali G.
I was gonna say your whole debate yesterday. I was watching. It was earlier today, actually. I was watching your debate with the Kinney guy, and no fluff is even needed in the Quran. So it's, at least as far as it looks, I haven't investigated all of this myself, but I've looked into it enough to know. And oh man, it sucks that you can't, like, the major voices that are like the stamp of approval are all saying this. That's difficult because I don't find that same problem with Christians. Usually you're either just a fundamentalist who borrows the whole thing, or you have some negotiation taking place and seeing the world around you, because the Bible doesn't tell us everything on how to do everything. So it sucks when that is like enforced on you. It's like a fundamentalist worldview on the outset. And I'm using that in a derogatory sense, not just saying fundamentals, because everyone has fundamentals in the world they live in. I mean, ism on the in there. It just seems inherent.
You know what's this reminds me, yesterday as I was I showed this part that we are just watching to my wife, and before even getting to what is being said, she's listening to Daniel Hikikichu talk about a little girl and her puberty and her breast forming and stuff, and she just did this, and she said, "How would people feel if we put a bunch of women up there and just let them talk about very uncomfortable things about little boys and their genitals and when to marry them and stuff like that." I just wonder, she said, and then she went away, and I thought, I never thought about that.
But by the way, how are, I mean, you IP and AP both talk about your wives hearing this stuff, and I mean, if they're hearing this stuff, and then AP, your wife hearing all the rape threats and so on Twitter, and then hearing how deep down, these anti-Islam women want someone to come in and take them over and ravish them and so on. I mean, how is everyone's wives not totally impressed with Islam and its great impact on and treatment of women?
David, it's because the liberal West has brainwashed all the women to think that they don't want to be, taken over by Muslim men and turned into sex slaves. Come on.
Oh, that's the funny thing. When you brought up that there is when you said that all the research out there on this topic shows that child marriage is harmful, didn't he say that that this is a Western conspiracy?
Basically, and I turned to the audience and said it was a conspiracy, and that really upset him.
Oh,
And then he went
because
on a big
there's
rant.
never been a conspiracy ever in history, right?
It's like, AP, did you like my my jest about him saying, like, we wouldn't deny the moon landing, like that's a conspiracy?
Yes.
Because
I know I was upset that he didn't respond to that. Yeah,
everyone, you can go do this right now on Daniel Hikikichu's channel. He has a live about 5 or 6 months ago where he's reviewing a conversation Jordan Peterson had with Muhammad Hijab, and about 3 hours and 41 minutes in, someone sends him in a super chat about interstellar travel, and Hakikichu goes on this big rant where he denies the moon landing and argues that humans could not even leave lower Earth orbit. And it's like, oh, you're one of those people. Okay, so he denies the moon landing. Yes, you can go see it yourself now.
And for very, very terrible and ignorant reasons.
Yes.
I caught that. I was watching it live, and as soon as you brought up the moon landing out of nowhere, just to make a comparison, I I started laughing. He didn't react to it. He should have. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
If man had traveled to the moon, they would see the crack, but they didn't see the crack. Therefore, they haven't been there. You see?
That would be something that I could imagine him doing. He starts with something and then works toward trying to fix it. That's what this whole debate's about, in my opinion. You got a problem with how you view the prophet, and you see him as someone who's married a 9-year-old. I know there are certain scholars I've talked to that are more historical critical method. In fact, Dr. Khalil Andani is in the chat right now, and he says the Quran doesn't teach child marriage, which I said I'd be happy to interview him on my channel to hear what
I would as well, because I am going solely off of
commentators,
centuries of Sunni Islamic commentators. So
right.
The verse, if you just read it, the verse does sound confusing, but 14 centuries of Sunni commentators have given a pretty standard. So yeah, if there's another understanding, I would like to hear it, because as much as we want to point out horrible things.
Yeah.
If at the end of the day, do we want Muslims thinking it's okay to marry children? No, I don't.
No.
So if there's another explanation, another way of understanding it, I'd be totally happy and
I am all for uniting with more moderate progressive Muslims against child marriage. I would love. So I don't want it. I want Muslims to know, if you are against Daniel Hikichu, then my debate was not against you. I was attacking his understanding of Islam.
And I want to say thank you for that.
Muslims on this. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael and David, for clarifying and just making that statement. That honestly makes me feel like, okay, we're all in unison. That's exactly my point. Because for me, I don't believe it. Like, I don't believe in Islam. I don't believe the Quran. I just want to make one quick comment. Apostate prophets actually telepathically tell me, shut the F up. I don't want to say the word that he was saying in his head. But my one comment is this. And that is, if I can find some historical critical method, talking to some scholars, and I have Muslim scholars that I've had come on, and they're pretty impressive. The 4-step model that you've talked about a lot, David, where it's like silent jihad, then it becomes more aggressive, and over time, war, because we have numbers, we have power, we have political power, we have strength, and this is kind of a developing method. You didn't make that up. It's not like you're just some antagonist.
No, I can show you that right here in their books right now if you want.
Exactly. And that's what one of the scholars who is a Muslim, and he's an academic from Harvard, has said, listen, I understand. I disagree with those voices. I'm going back to the Quran. Now, I don't believe it at the end of the day, but I love learning, like, what does the Quran actually say? Because the way they piece together and like they find pericope after pericope and they like cherry pick to try and fit their model. He says, no, just read it on. So it actually looks better when you let the Quran speak for itself than allowing those voices to talk. But it's still a damaging thing for me, because the fundamentals of this faith, there's so many people who listen to those voices. That is what makes their faith really popular and what everybody else is following, the models of the heroes before, not just what's in the Quran. That's the struggle I find. But sorry for that.
Yeah, similarly, I'm kind of in a similar boat there, where it's like, okay, there are other people who have different perspectives and aren't relying on the same hadiths and aren't relying on the same commentators and so on. But you've got the people who are massively growing rapidly. I mean, the people who are exploding in popularity are all presenting some really, really horrible views. So like, I
That's
can't,
scary.
it's like, we have to keep blasting away at that stuff, even if there are some other people who don't think that way. But yeah, I mean, if some people want to point out that they're wrong, I mean, I'll help that they'll do that. In fact, matter of fact, since Joshua Little came up in the debate I had, I'll go ahead and say, if you had asked me before Joshua Little's dissertation, David, how sure are you that Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 or 7 and then consummated the marriage when she was 9, I would have said like 99% sure. I mean, it's just because it's all over. It's all, I mean, every source every, hadith collection you pick up, it's 9 years old. Aisha said she was 9 years old, right? And you keep doing that all day long. And it's like, I mean, gosh, if I know anything about him, I know that he married a young girl. And then their scholars, any of their scholars that you remotely trust, they all say this. But Joshua Little, I have to say, made a much stronger case that that's in question than I thought was possible. And he's basically calling all of that into question, not just because of the specific hadiths, but he's pointing out the methods that they use to compile hadiths and so on is much more problematic than even I was aware. So, I knew they had problems. I knew there were tons of stuff being made up, but I didn't know how bad the problem was. And so, as I said, if you'd asked me just a few months ago how sure I was, I'd have been like 99%. If you were to ask me now, I'd be like, if Joshua Little's right on what a lot of what he's saying, I'm more like 50-50 on whether Muhammad married Aisha. And so Khalil, if you're still on there, if you wanted to do something fun, contact Joshua Little. You guys come on with me and AP. Me and AP will present our view and why we've criticized this and what the standard position that we're dealing with is. And then you could give like your because I don't know a lot about what the Shia or Ismaili position is. And then you could give that position, and then we could just let Joshua Little take like an hour to lay out his challenges to that case. And so that's that's out there. That's out there on the table.
Yeah, you all talk too much.
I told you he was thinking it. I told you.
Now, of course, I get to say the final word because I'm the boss. I just want to say I appreciated Dr. Khalil Andani. The issue is, I just look at something that is along the lines of what David said. It's about what Islam is and how many Muslims actually believe in your form of Islam and in Daniel Hikichu's form of Islam. So I just want to make a contrast here and say, without any disrespect or anything, if you look at your following and your channel, how many people are following you as Muslims? And then if you look at people like Daniel Hikichu, Muhammad Tijab, Ali Dawa, and all these horrible individuals who have abhorrent views, how popular are they among Muslims? We all know that they are the most popular Muslims on the internet. They
little young kids are looking up to them to mimic and model them, believe like them, and all of that. So the best we could do is combat the bad ideas. And if we find common ground with you or the historical critical method, dude, I'm all for that too. I think Dave, I mean, look, so you're telling me that we can't trust your sources. Cool. I mean, like, I'm okay with that. I mean, that's my opinion, at least when it comes to the Sunnah and the Hadith and things like that. Like, do we know what is historically reliable? I'm all about that game, and I love that because it's what I like to do. But I do that with Christianity. I do that with Judaism. I do it with everything. So, anyway.
Yep. Anyway, let's move on. I want to play this part again. So here is Mike asking Daniel about precocious puberty, which is puberty that starts unusually early, before the age of 8 to 9, and says if a girl shows signs of maturity at the age of 5, is it okay to consummate the marriage with her?
Precocious puberty.
No, marriage can happen, you can arrange a marriage even as an infant, but that doesn't mean that sex is allowed.
But could a man have a marriage to a 5-year-old consummated if she started precocious puberty?
If she starts showing signs of physical maturity, then yes, that's permissible. As I say,
What about age 4?
if there are signs
3.
So this is something that becomes biologically impossible because precocious
I have a
puberty,
study
there are
that shows
no.
it goes as early as 11 months.
All right, well, that's something that the parents would not. See, the thing about Islamic marriage is that.
So
This is where I was headed.
I loved how you did this, Mike. I loved how you
Thank
did this.
you.
It was very well pushed, very well put on the spot.
Yeah.
So you ask him about having sex with a 5-year-old if she shows early signs of puberty. He says yes. If there are signs of maturity, it is okay for a man to marry and have sex with a 5-year-old girl. We have this far talked about cases of having sex with a 9-year-old. Right, on this channel, I've mentioned this a lot, and I've kind of asked people to deconceptualize and kind of visualize it, as disgusting as it is to understand what in the world we are dealing with. But here in this case, Mike is pushing Daniel and asking about having sex with a 5-year-old girl who shows early signs of puberty, and Daniel goes and says, according to Islam, it is allowed, it is okay to have sex with her. Mike pushes and says, what about 4? He says yes. He pushes and says, what about 3? Daniel says, well, this is biologically impossible. Mike then goes on and says, I actually have research which shows that it can start as early as 11 months. I have found the same thing as soon as I Googled it. You showed it earlier at the beginning of this live stream. So in what Daniel then does as a final resort, he deflects and says, well, in Islam also the parents and the caretakers, the guardians are in charge and they can decide. But here is the issue.
What if they decide?
Yeah, here's the issue. It is up to them. What if they decide it's okay?
Well, there's a book written by Anna Sattler, which I read before this debate, called Predators.
Laptop?
It's laptop right there. Yeah. They have a whole chapter on child predators and what to look for. And I honestly, everyone needs to read that book, especially if you have children, because you don't know what a child predator is. What I see is a really dumb argument from Muslims is like, oh, Aisha praised Muhammad. She only had nice things to say about him. Yeah. And read Anna Sattler's book about predators. Predators don't start grooming the children. They start grooming the family, the close ones around them, showing them how much of a good person they are. Then when they start grooming the child they're abusing, everyone around the child is saying, this person is such an angel. They're such a wonderful person. You should be lucky they want to spend so much time with you. Then then the predator is telling the child, what we're doing is just fine. It's natural. It's wonderful. It's just a good thing. So everyone around them is telling them telling the child that that this person is a wonderful angel. And then the predator is telling the child everything they're doing is fine and natural. So a lot of times these children who have been abused come out of these situations and go, he never hurt me. Nothing was wrong. He was fine. Everyone said he was great and wonderful. And so when people are citing Aisha's commentary on Muhammad, they don't realize how much she falls in line with victims of sexual abuse. Muslims are always shooting themselves in the foot with this Aisha thing. It's they don't even understand the signs to look for with child predators. And it's scary because if they don't realize what's actually happening and they're defending based on Aisha's commentary, they could very well just let a child predator, pass by their warning signals. It's scary.
Well, when your prophet was a predator, he's kind of the model. So when you see the predator, it's like, oh, he's great, just like Muhammad.
This reminds me of cults. I remember watching and then reading upon this whole thing, this cult in Chile, which is might have heard of it, Colonia Dignidad or something like that, where a former Nazi went and set up a supposedly religious camp and basically brainwashed the people in there, and then after a while started also having sexual interactions with the children of the cult members, and this was known within the cult, and it became accepted. People didn't want to object to the guy, and this was explained away as, there is something holy about it. You shouldn't complain because you are in a place of holiness, and this guy is obviously the best, the purest human that we have ever seen in our lives. Through this brainwashing and this conditioning of we are under some an amazing person's guidance, therefore whatever he does is okay. Abuse is done and normalized, and we have the same example in the Jim Jones cult, for example, or other cults.
I was just thinking of Joseph Smith, and like these were teenagers, like young teens. Some were 12, and he was doing that, and at least they were older compared to what we're talking about here. But yeah, he would take advantage of a lot of these young girls. He got caught in the spot a few times. There's all sorts of things, but I would love to know about Aisha's diary or her particular situation. Did she write it, or did a man write it for her and say she said it? Hey, this girl's on. She really loves what she's getting, and it's a guy who might be saying it. I don't know.
Well, these are all reports from people who say, I heard from this guy, who heard from this guy, who heard from this guy, who heard from Aisha that she said so and so.
And
until you get there.
And just to preempt the dumb arguments you get from Daniel's acolytes, which is, Christians were like this before liberalism. No, read Children in Late Ancient Christianity, the chapter by John Martins, Do Not Sexually Abuse Children, the language of early Christian sexual ethics. He notes that it was Christians in the early Roman Empire that were pushing an end to these pedophilic practices that were happening throughout the Roman Empire. They were vehemently fighting hard to end this kind of stuff, that these were the images of God. You can't just use them for sex. There's no sex outside of marriage, and that needs to happen later. If you read works by Brent Shaw and Keith Hopkins, they were encouraging much later marriages than even their surrounding pagans. So late teens is when they were basically marrying.
I want to add something to what you just said that's important too, because in various facets of Christianity, there was also asceticism. So there were many Christians who were like, sex is bad. And they literally would have lifelong vows to not even have sex. So come on, it's not like they're driven and motivated to have 4 wives and reproduce 19 kids and things like that.
But Daniel said that is irrational. It's you can't do that. Abstinence doesn't work.
Christianity is vehemently opposed to polygamy, and that was another thing. He's saying you didn't give a solution to the whole problem of teens running around. So I started to try to give a solution, and the moment he tried, he's he interrupted me. He's like, that doesn't work. You didn't give a solution. That doesn't work. I'm like, would you let me actually explain myself? But he wouldn't let me because he knew I actually had a longer argument prepared where I was going to give it, but he didn't want me to give it.
The only solution is for grown men to marry toddlers.
Man. All right.
It's the only way.
Let's finish this here.
Parents are involved at these ages. And when you look at the marriage of the prophet, peace be upon him, to Aisha, her parents were involved. And so she was not living with the prophet, peace be upon him, even though she was married to him. So the parents have oversight. And sometimes a qadi or a judge can have oversight if the guardians are not capable, to make sure that the rights and the physical well-being of a child are not, or a minor, are not harmed by that marriage.
What about, because you've tried to justify sexual slavery.
I love this part.
So what if a man finds a 7-year-old, let's say, started her period, could he take her back as a sex slave?
So that's a whole different debate on slavery and concubinage.
I'm just talking about the minor aspect. Would that be fine?
He didn't want to answer that.
If a girl is any age, she can be taken as
a sex slave, right?
Yeah, as opposed to being left behind.
So women can take care of themselves. They would need to be taken by the men because they're too capable of caring for themselves.
Only about 10 seconds left.
Yeah, so that is the conclusion of this.
But by the way, notice what I just wanted to point out real quick, because I think there's a problem with a lot of what he's saying, and IP pointed out, that there doesn't seem to be a concept of, hey, we know you have desires, learn to control them. Like even in which I'm sure we'll discuss in another live stream, but Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa talking about why men have secret second wives, and they're basically saying we're made for all these desires for multiple women. You're made to be just for us, so stop being selfish and think that you get us all to yourself when we need we need multiple wives. We're made for that sort of thing. But think about this: when you're saying that because you have the desires, therefore the rules need to take your desires into consideration. Think about Aisha. Muhammad marries her when she's 6 or 7. then consummates the marriage when she's 9. He dies when she's 18, before she's ever reached what is the ordinary, sexual peak for women. And he makes it a rule in the Quran: no one can marry his wives after him.
Yep.
So she spends from the time she's 18 for the rest of her life never allowed to have sex with anyone. And yet it's like, well, what if she wants to have sex? Too bad, your desires are irrelevant. Shut up. This is the rule. This is what the Quran says. So she's expected to have self-control, but anyone else, nope. Allah miraculously designs all the rules that just so happen to be the desires that were popular in 7th century Arabia for 7th century Arabian men.
Well, what David just said, it's right in the Quran. David, do you remember the verse? It is the same verse that it talks about not staying too long at his home, right?
Yeah, that's Surah 33, 50, 49, 59. Yeah, it's been a while since we talked about that.
When after he finds out, I want to give you some context for why I brought this up, because it comes from his post-debate review with Harris Sultan. He said something that's pretty misogynistic. So
yeah,
I wrote down the whole quote from. I went to like his thing and did it. So if you go to he did like a 9-hour post-debate review of his debate with Harris Sultan, and at 4 hours, 50 minutes, and 9 seconds in, he goes on this really misogynistic rant. Which in the rant he has to say, "I'm not a misogynist," because he realizes how misogynistic what he's saying. So everyone can go and listen to this part. But what he's basically saying, I can just read you the whole quote if you want. I don't know. It's really long though. But he says, if today all the men disappeared in the world and only the women and children were left, how long do you think they would last? Even with all the technology that makes life so convenient and easy? Well, the power would go out pretty soon, because the electric grid, it's men who are doing the job of maintaining the infrastructure of the country. So your power, your clean running water, your gas pipelines, all of this would be gone within a week, maximum a week, but probably way before that. Maybe the first day, maybe the hour before, depending on where you live. So no electricity, no water, transportation. You can't use your electric car. You're not going to have gas to get your nice minivan to drive to the grocery store. He goes on about Uber Eats, and there won't be any more Netflix. All the men are dead. So how long are you going to survive in the modern world as women when this happens? A day, 2 days? When all the food is run out? And a lot of people make this argument, nowadays because it's an obvious answer. All these strong, independent women, it doesn't matter how strong, independent they are. I'm not a misogynist, but let's be real. Let's get to the facts. No matter how strong and independent you are, these women aren't going to do these jobs. These jobs are 99% male dominated. Men are keeping society afloat all over the world. This is not a Muslim, non-Muslim argument, because Muslim countries are the exact same thing. It's the men. Women, yeah, you're a strong career woman, but can you do an office? You can do an office job. Okay. So he goes on and says, now imagine 500 years, 1,000 years in the past, 2,000 years in the past. What are these women going to do? The men have all been killed in war, in battle. They've been killed. So are they just going to blah, blah, blah? I can just imagine a liberal mind thinking, well, those women should be, just respected, given equal status in society. They should be living free. Then Daniel says, but this is nonsense. You have to coerce. You have to coerce these women to integrate into your society, or you could just leave them to die. You can leave them to die. The Imam, as I mentioned, can make that choice. He can say that we are not taking any concubines. We're not taking any slaves. The Imam can choose that. He is basically sentencing them to death. He's sentencing them to death. So Daniel's basically saying that when in war in the past, when all the men were killed, women literally cannot take care of themselves and their own children. They would just basically die. They're so incompetent. They cannot find food or care for their children without men there. This is incredibly misogynistic. It's also wrong. Women do these types of jobs all day.
Without a doubt.
Plumber. Yeah, we had a female plumber here once. We just got our car fixed by an automotive shop here in Tucson that's all female owned. Okay, women can do these jobs. And if, yes, all men disappeared like tomorrow, it would suck because half their population is gone. But women the human species would go on. They would raise the children and there would be new men that grow up.
What if they did better off without us? I'm just kidding. Listen, hey, serious comment though. I worked in a construction job, like I did renewable energy. We had, I'd say if there were 20 men, we had 7 or 8 females that worked out there with us. 3 of those girls were one of the like on the top end of our employees. And this was not like, this wasn't like, oh, your construction job where they wave flags or like, you know, hold a sign up for like transportation. This is, we're out there on farms, heavy equipment, installing we're pile driving I-beams into the ground. They're lifting I-beams up. They're setting up lines. They're in the mud. They're working their ass off. And they did this every day in and out. I worked with them. I ran crews with them and could trust them oftentimes more to get the job done efficiently than some of the guys who were knuckleheads. So
wait. I have to ask, IP, did you say that there's an all-female mechanic shop and you actually went to it?
Yeah, it's called like JB or something. We just got our car fixed there. They were actually really great. The customer service was phenomenal. And yeah, I'm going back there again if I get the choice because they were great. But
Come on, IP, come on. I mean,
yeah, it's true. I love them. They're pretty awesome. But the reason I bring all this up is just to basically point out that in the debate, Daniel was basically trying to justify sexual slavery in this post-debate review that he gave with Harris Sultan. You got to take them back as sex slaves because they can't take care of themselves, guys. We got to take them back and use them for sex and treat them like concubines and property. It's the only
women
way
are
they're gonna
stupid.
survive.
Have you seen them? They're like babies. They are stupid.
God.
They can't function by themselves. That's how women are.
So that's why I brought this all up in the Q&A because I know he tries to think he thinks this is actually doing them a favor because he's such a misogynist. No, you're not. Okay, most of those women would not want to sleep with these men who just murdered all their husbands and fathers and brothers. They would. I mean, like, just talk to Naria, for example. I mean, she said she'd rather be dead than be taken like that. This is why I drink.
So here's the Quran verse. It says in Quran chapter 33, verse 53. It's a ridiculous verse about not staying too long.
This is my favorite Quran verse.
Oh yeah, it's actually David's favorite. I made a video about this before as well because it's so funny. It says, "O you who have believed, do not enter the houses of the prophet except when you are permitted for a meal, without awaiting its readiness. But when you are invited, then enter. And when you have eaten, disperse without seeking to remain for conversation. Indeed, that behavior was troubling the prophet, and he is shy of dismissing you. But Allah is not shy of the truth. And when you ask his wives for something, ask them from behind a partition, a veil, that is purer for your hearts and their hearts. And it is not conceivable or lawful for you to harm the messenger of Allah or to marry his wives after him ever. Indeed, that would be in the sight of Allah an enormity." This verse is altogether completely ridiculous, and within context, it's like people come to Muhammad's house after the wedding, right? And they stay too long, and Muhammad gets upset about this. He walks around, and they just won't leave. And then Allah, of course, sees this. The Almighty Allah sees this, and he's like, "Oh no, my messenger, he's feeling very uncomfortable right now, but he's also shy. He doesn't want to say anything about this. I will now send a revelation." Through him, through his mouth to the people.
That's why this is like so hilarious, right? It's like the man. This is Muhammad receiving this revelation, saying, "I got a revelation from Allah," and it's like, okay, what's the revelation? Allah says, "You're annoying." Muhammad, he's too shy to tell you about it. He's not going to tell you about it. But Allah says, could you stop coming over his house and asking him questions? Talking him to death when he's trying to have some sexy time with his wife. He's too shy to tell you, but Allah's not shy. So anyway, that's a revelation I just received, guys. Oh, and don't marry his wives after him. We don't want anyone being compared with me. Sexually and stuff. So don't do that. And it's like, are you serious? Like, how
this is a revelation.
How did people not just walk away after this? I mean, like,
you're not a real man if you don't want your wife to have the ability to get remarried if you were to pass away.
Look at this. Look at this right here. Share the screen real quick. Check this out. This is in the vein. I'm sharing the screen. Section 132, Doctrine and Covenants. This is a doctrine for all Mormons. This entire letter, if anyone is interested in knowing, like William Clayton, who's the right-hand man of Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith's brother are in a room by themselves talking about this whole secret marriage thing. They're having all these marriages where they're having sex with a lot of men they sent off on missions, having sex with the married women, having sex with the teens and getting, being married to them, the whole nine. So he approaches Emma and says to his wife, God has told me, like, I need to have more than one wife. He's trying to get the cat out of the bag. Right. He's trying to like edge his way into like having to go, fine, okay, but she is not having it. So she gets pissed off and says to him, well, if you have wives, then I'm going to have husbands. That's what she says. So he goes and has this private conversation. For anyone who's seriously interested in checking this out, he says, thus saith the Lord, right? Like I'm talking full on Emma, the wife of the prophet, I am speaking to you, thus saith the Lord, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he goes into all those, the prophets and really the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, all the polygamy marriages in the Bible is like what he starts pulling from. And he starts to make this case. And finally, God directly speaks through his words to Emma and says, and you cannot have other husbands, but he can have all these wives. Dude, I'm not making this up. If you ever want to get a laugh, go check out Doctrine and Covenants 132.
Wow.
Hey, IP, if you want some YouTube gold, just make a video titled, was the demon that came to Muhammad the same one that came to Joseph Smith?
I mean,
you can point out all the similarities. It's like, it's got to be the same. It's got to be the same one.
They both had child brides. They both were polygamous, and polygamy is evil and horrible, especially to women and the children involved. I mean, I'm so thankful the Christian history has been vehemently opposed to polygamy throughout the ages. And sorry, that's
and it's only worked one way too. That's another problem. Like,
you know what's Derek, you know what's really cool is there's a clip of Bart Ehrman, and he's giving a talk at some weird temple, on the Gospel of Judas, and in the Q&A section, someone is asking him about did Jesus have a wife? Did Jesus have a wife? And he goes off and he talks about this a little bit. He says, actually, most men in the ancient world before the modern era were not married, except for times of extreme war. There's always been more men than women. Because of so many that have died in childbirth. So polygamy should never have actually happened in history because there's always been more men. It's just these greedy, lustful men that have always wanted more women when there hasn't been enough women to go around because they keep, unfortunately, dying in childbirth. There's always been more men. And so he was using that to point out this is why we know Jesus was probably not married.
Yeah. I want to look at a few. I marked a few reactions here to the debate on modern day debate, which this is the first time I've come across this Mike Jones guy, but he killed it. I don't think any sincere person will be taking Daniel seriously from now on. Now, it is a good comment. It is a good reaction from somebody who doesn't know you. But the issue is they are wrong about the second part here, about saying I don't think any sincere person will be taking Daniel. Well, okay, it says sincere person to be fair, but But Daniel will still be taken seriously by his Islamic audience and by all those Islamists. Nothing will be lost on his part, despite everyone witnessing such a horrible debate on his part and such a public humiliation.
I'm just shocked that someone would honestly take that debate and actually debate what he was trying to defend. But then again, after seeing him before, it doesn't shock us. It's very few things that Daniel Kikachu shocks me with anymore. I just don't know why he would think he had a chance. I don't know.
Well, he thinks he's so here. This one is. I don't understand the Muslim guy's point. He says prepubescent children are sexually frustrated, then goes on to make the argument that a proper outlet for this frustration is to marry young girls to old men. Such a strange person. Didn't he make a comparison? And he asked you if it's. He said a 12-year-old girl who marries a 25-year-old man.
Oh yeah, let's address this. Let me address this really quick. So he's trying to give me a comparison. He's trying to say which is more immoral. And I knew I wouldn't have time in the debate to answer this. He's trying to say, which is more immoral, a 25-year-old who marries a 10-year-old or two 10-year-olds who have sex outside of marriage? Now, I said they're both immoral. I don't have to say which is more immoral because I'm a virtue ethicist. I don't know which is more immoral because I don't know the circumstances. Who are these people involved? What sexual acts are going on? Who's being more harmed? What is the psychology of this thing? There are so many details he left out of this thought experiment. There's not enough to give for me to make a proper judgment. My intuition tells me that it would be more immoral for the 25 and the 10-year-old because of all the evidence I presented that child marriage is harmful.
I'm with you.
You're putting this girl is in this situation where now she's basically a slave to this man because of the power dynamics. Again, I cited research on the problems of the power dynamics in these relationships. And she's going to be abused, psychologically abused. Whereas the 2 10-year-olds, you can just separate them, get them in therapy, and they'll be fine a little bit after that. But the thing is that I don't know enough of the details of these situations that he's presenting to make a valid moral judgment. And so that's my response to him in that debate. They're both immoral. It's impossible for me right now in the details to be able to say which is going to be more immoral. But my intuition says the child marriage aspect is going to be far more immoral. Given all the data I cited on how utterly harmful child marriage is, you can't escape this. There's just so much research that I wasn't even able to get to due to time limits on how harmful child marriage is.
You know what's funny? After almost 2 hours of debate, where you explain to him that it is categorically wrong and harmful to marry children because it is incredibly harmful in many ways, he makes the comparison to. So that is the first stupid thing that he does. He makes the comparison to a 45-year-old woman who is pregnant. But then, after talking for almost 2 hours, he when you say that if a 45-year-old woman goes to the doctor and the doctor says, it is harmful, you shouldn't do it, then she probably shouldn't do it. He then objects with an extremely dumb thing. He says, well, why can't we do the same thing about a child, like a 12-year-old? Why can't she just go to the doctor? Dude, we have just argued for over an hour that it is absolutely wrong and harmful, condemned. You will not find a doctor approving of this, which is why you shouldn't go to the doctor and expect him to say it's not okay.
But AP, this is a problem too. This is from my perception. In his estimation, sex is purely for reproduction. So, like, at least it seems like he's trying to push that. Even though you've argued, Michael, and David's brought this up in his debate after you, that like there's the prepubescent, meaning they can't have babies, sex, but it seems like that's the ultimate drive, and yet he wants to bring in this like reproduction model to go, hey, 45 and up, big risk on death there, and you're risking your life. I don't know. I'm with you on the intuition here. She's 45, like she kind of has a decision to make. She's old enough to know a thing or two about life, and yet you're telling me 10-year-olds. I mean, I have a 9-year-old upstairs. When I pick him up from school, I take him to school, and if his mother's not taking him, and their world and what they're thinking is nowhere's near what I'm thinking, and well, I can guide them. I can guide him wherever I want, however I want. It's
well, he's not taking it in context. A 45-year-old woman's pelvic bones are fully developed.
Yep.
Okay, she's far different than a 15-year-old whose pelvic floor is not fully developed or is spread out. Okay, you're not going to develop the psychiatric issues. You're not going to have the extreme high risk of death. Again, as I cited in the debate, a girl under 15 is like 5 times more likely to develop an obstetric fistula than someone over 15. Okay, there's no comparison with a 45-year-old when it comes to the mental issues, the emotional issues, the intimate partner violence, the studies on that I cited. And again, the physical issues are not even the same because the pelvic floor is not the same. So he's comparing apples to oranges and thinking this was sort of like a good argument. He really has not thought this through.
Even, I mean, if we just want to talk about causing harm to others, the comparison that he makes is, a child that you may be a guardian of, and a 45-year-old woman. A 45-year-old woman may go to the doctor and learn that it is not good for her to get pregnant. It is, it causes harm. It is not good for her, and then it is up to her as a grown woman to make the decision and to say, okay, well, the doctor said this. I will not do this. On the other hand, we are talking about a 12-year-old girl, for example, who is a child in development, and who would through such a marriage and a pregnancy be harmed as she is in development and doesn't have the proper abilities to judge the way a 45-year-old woman does and to come to a proper conclusion. We're talking about completely different things here, where in one case it is about you and whether you want to do that to yourself or not, and we're talking about a child who is in development and whether we want to ruin and destroy that child or not. I don't understand how in the world he thinks that is a good idea to make that comparison.
But by the way, AP, one of those comments you just pulled up, someone said that they're not going to trust Daniel anymore. People can't trust Daniel anymore. It's interesting because Daniel obviously has some really, really horrible views, but when he was citing sources in the past, he's always citing sources saying, according to this study, according to this study, according to this book, and giving him the benefit of the doubt. I was always assuming that he was citing things accurately, even if he has horrible views. So one of the benefits of his methodology is if you quote a bunch of sources that no one's familiar with, they don't know if you're quoting them wrong. In this debate, he started quoting things that I was familiar with, and I can't think of anything he quoted where he was actually interpreting it and representing what it said correctly. And so now it's like, wait a minute, if you quote 50 things that I've never read, I mean, I think you're quoting them accurately. If you then cite 5 or 6 or 7 things that I'm familiar with and you completely misrepresent every single one of them, it's like, whoa. Now I can't trust you on anything now. I can't trust you because the only things where I could actually test you were wrong. You misrepresented it. And therefore, I can't trust you on anything. So at this point on, anything Daniel says, it would be like, look, give me the study. Let me read it because there is no way I can trust what you're saying about it. And AP, just as a quick, easy example, I sent you a link to the Catholic Encyclopedia. Didn't he say that according to the site, correct? I mean, I was working on my opening statement while this debate was going on, but didn't he say that according to the Catholic Encyclopedia, Mary was 12 or 14, and then
13 or something.
Yeah, and then Joseph was 90 at the time. Is that what he said according to the Catholic Encyclopedia?
I think it's 80. I can't remember the exact numbers, but yeah, it's like that big disparity. But to just add really quickly, the same apocryphal sources also say Mary was a perpetual virgin, so there was never any intercourse with her. So
yeah, but look what happens. Look what happens when we actually read it. Scroll down to marriage. It's called marriage or marriage, something like that. Yeah, marriage. So you've got this passage. Now go down to, because this is where you get 90. Scroll down. So look right there, right above. So at the top there, at the very top, it will not be without interest. So this is what the Catholic Encyclopedia actually says in context when it talks about Joseph being 90 and so on. It will not be without interest to recall here, unreliable though they are, the lengthy stories concerning Saint Joseph's marriage contained in the apocryphal writings. So it's talking about unreliable apocryphal writings. Watch, it gets better. When 40 years of age, Joseph married a woman called Milcah, blah, 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 blah. They had 2 daughters, blah, blah, blah. A year after his wife's death, as the priests announced through Judea that they wished to find in the tribe of Judah, a respectable man to espouse Mary, then 12 to 14 years of age, Joseph, who was at the time 90 years old, went up to Jerusalem among the candidates. A miracle manifested the choice God had made of Joseph, and 2 years later, the Annunciation took place. These dreams, as St. Jerome styles them, from which many a Christian artist has drawn his inspiration, see, for instance, Raphael's blah, 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 are void of authority. Right?
Wow.
So just imagine, the Catholic Encyclopedia says, we're going to tell you what this source says, even though it has no authority, it's apocryphal, and it's unreliable because it's so late. And what IP pointed out, there was a reason for this, because by now there's a discussion. Was Mary always a virgin? And if so, what about the brothers of Jesus in Scripture? How did Jesus have brothers if Mary was always a virgin? So there was a drive to write some sort of source explaining why Joseph never had sex with her. Well, if he's 90 and she's like 12, he's an old man, right? And then as far as brothers, we'll say that, he had another marriage beforehand. And so the writing sources in order to account for their position. But then the Catholic Encyclopedia says, but we don't, we don't trust these sources. They're unreliable. They're apocryphal. And yet when Daniel looks at this, you see, she was 12 and he was 90, according to the Catholic Encyclopedia. This is wild stuff. So notice everything he quoted that I was familiar with, it was like this. It was like, that's not what that says. That it does not say what you just said. The Talmud doesn't say what you said. The Catholic Encyclopedia doesn't say that. Dude, this is bad. One thing you do know though, his followers will not care.
Yeah. We talked about this before we started the live stream, but Michael and I we talked months ago about Daniel Kikuchu. Once it was confirmed that the two will actually have a debate, and as soon as we started talking, I said to him, one thing I noticed after the first time that I talked to Daniel Kikuchu is that he brings up a lot of sources, and when you look into the sources, you notice that none of the sources he mentions actually support his arguments. I'm not exaggerating. None of them support his arguments. And Michael had already by then, looked into his streams and the things that he brought up, and already read the researches. And he said the same thing to me. He also noticed the very same thing. Daniel brings up citations, sources, and makes it look like they are in his favor, makes it look like they argue what he wants to argue. But if you actually open the source, it has nothing to do with what he is claiming. So even during his debate with Nuria Khan recently, he brought up certain studies on how feminism has failed and the West has failed and women have become increasingly depressed and so on. And he cited a research which supports the idea that feminism has failed and women's rights have failed and stuff like that. If you actually open the research that he cites, the research is about how the development of women's rights and freedom has been problematic. Has been problematic because it hasn't been balanced enough. Because women are still disadvantaged and still not fully equal. So the study actually argues that that there is harm and that there are problems because there is not enough equality. Whereas Daniel uses this study and misrepresents it and twists it and argues that equality is a bad thing. So it is so stupid. I mean, what he does is, I mentioned this to Mike too. When I first went to college, it's like at the beginning they teach us how to conduct basic research, and nobody expects you to actually use citations that are very detailed and support your stuff. In the very beginning, all you learn is to look for citations that seem to have something to do with what you are arguing, and that's it. And what Daniel Kikuchu does is basically that he's at that stage with his citations. He just looks for something. Maybe he looks at the abstract of the research and thinks, okay, this seems to agree with what I think, so I'll just mention this study. And then he comes and gives you a citation to that study, which once you read the study is completely in contradiction with whatever he's saying.
Yeah.
And that's notice the parallel, because that's been the Islamic methodology of Islamic apologetics for forever, right? I mean, just think about it, finding prophecies about Muhammad in the Bible. You sit there reading, verse 1 says that Islam is false, verse 2 says that Islam is false, verse 3 says that Islam is false. All of a sudden you get to verse 18. Oh, that's something I can twist into a prophecy about Muhammad. Alhamdulillah, this is the proof. Verse 19 says Muhammad's a false prophet. Verse 20 says Muhammad's a false prophet.
Isaiah 42.
Yeah, they're able to scan massive amounts of material and then just fixate on one thing that can be twisted into supporting their case. And that's just been the Islamic methodology for years. Daniel's just applying it to like various psychological studies and so on, but it's the same methodology. Let me go through this entire thing. Oh, here's something that can be used for me, even if the entire rest of the study completely contradicts what he's saying.
Let's get to Bruce Ryan, because this has been Daniel's go-to guy for years to defend child marriage. Now, Bruce Ryan never defends child marriage, never once. But this is the weirdest unholy alliance I've ever seen, because Bruce Ryan is trying to defend pedophilia in a lot of ways. Him and his co-author of the 1998 meta-analysis. Ryan has actually spoken at conferences in the Netherlands that defend pedophilia. He has written for a journal called Patakia, PAIDIKA, which defends pedophilia. So this guy is someone who's, and specifically, he's focusing more on defending man-boy pedophilia. So this is the weirdest source for Daniel to bring up to defend his case for child marriage. But this is the guy that he has been going to make this case. Most of what Rind is going, and if you want to share the screen there, AP, I'll bring up the 1998 meta-analysis because this is what he's citing in the debate. So this is the 1998 meta-analysis. This meta-analysis was condemned by both houses of Congress and the psychological community at large, the psychology community at large. And what Rind is doing in this, and is co-author as well, is they're trying to argue that
Can you enlarge it?
Yeah, I can zoom in a little bit here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What Ryan is trying to do here is trying to say that there is no evidence that pedophilia is really harmful to the child involved. Now, this, as I noted in the debate, this was an outlier meta-analysis. There was other meta-analysis more that found the opposite of what Ryan found here. But this was the meta-analysis that he's using. The problem with this meta-analysis is it's cherry-picked data. Ryan is only grabbing sample sizes from people who are in college. But as other researchers have noted, that people that have really been damaged by child predators end up going to college because they have psychological issues that last for a while. So you're just sort of like pulling the people that sort of recovered well. A lot of the poor children in these incidents don't recover. But the ironic thing is what I was trying to point in the debate, which Daniel denied, is that Rind argues that actually the boys that have been abused are not reporting as much harm. It's the girls. And here's the quote I wanted to bring up, because he says, in general, findings from the current review suggest that socio-legal definitions of child sexual abuse have more scientific validity in the case of female children and adolescents than for male and adolescents, given the higher rate of unwanted negative experiences for women. So Rind is basically, once again, saying the boys, basically, do not experience really harmful effects after. But the women do, and they report that. So, again, the most weirdest, unholy alliance I have ever seen in my, like, why would you cite a guy trying to defend man-boy love to support heterosexual child marriage? It's ridiculous. Now, the other study I wanted to bring up, you can put this one, I'll bring up the other study here, is the study he just cited in his debate with Harris Sultan. He cited it as far back as 2019. He also cited it in his post-debate review with Harris Sultan. So this is the one, it's called Hebephilia as a Mental Disorder. Now, this is the one I've read multiple times here. You can see it here. If you go to his post-debate review, he puts this on the screen. So I read it immediately when I saw it. And I pointed out, page 7, child sexual abuse research have repeatedly maintained that hebephilic interactions are innately and intensely harmful for the younger person. And then he cites his own research to back that up. Then at the end of the review, the end of his study here, he says, he hopes this provides direction for psychiatry in helping those with hebephilic impulses to control their behavior. So he's hoping this research helps people to stop having hebephilic interactions. He's not hoping people use this to argue in favor. And he even says here at the top of this page, to conclude it should be accepted, that it should be accepted because of its expression in other species is an instance of a naturalistic fallacy, and to judge it moral in our society because it has been judged in other cultures is to commit the relativistic fallacy. So he's basically saying Daniel can't even use his own research to argue in favor of child marriage, to argue that it's moral, because Rind is basically even in agreement that this would not demonstrate it's moral. He's arguing that these practices should be curbed, that they should be stopped. And my favorite part is, again, these 4 pages where he just lists man-boy love constantly happening throughout the world, how common it was. Because Daniel's argument is that child marriage was so common that why would it be bad if it was so common? But so was man-boy love. It was so common. And notice all the highlighted parts I pointed out. It was constantly Westerners ending man-boy love. The tradition eroded in the late 19th century in reaction to Western abhorrence. The tradition faded when the practice of military service discontinued under British colonization. With outside cultural context, the tradition began to decay. The tradition ended in the later 19th century because of embarrassment and Western repugnance of efforts to modernize. So again, Daniel, I'm so sorry that Christians came and we took away your child brides and your man-boy love, and we just ruined it with our liberal Western values we thrust upon the world. You're welcome.
Christian apologizes for ruining the world.
But Michael, one thing that I'm remembering here, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it about this research and this guy Bruce Ryan that you had a disagreement with him during the debate, and he didn't agree that with your correct assessment of what the studies actually say, and he then wanted to compare the studies. And you wanted to read the actual study and actually quote from it. And what did he want to do? What did he want to do instead? Can you say that?
He wanted to just read the abstract like he did in his review with Harris Sultan, where he just read the abstract, where he doesn't mention anything about homosexual hemophilic interaction. But like he assumes the abstract is going to give him all the details about the study. That's just false. You can see in the abstract of this study, it doesn't mention that the study goes into homosexual hemophilic interactions. It just is kind of vague about it. But it seems to be that's what he thinks the abstract represents the whole study. Well, that's not always the case.
Yeah, and this brings me back to what I said what I said before, which is that it looks like what he does is he simply skims through research that seemingly supports his views. And without actually reading through the research, without studying the research, looking at the abstract and maybe skimming through it, he then presents this as a supportive source, as supportive evidence, right? I mean, this is what it looks like.
I'm looking at that quote.
You want to read? Yeah, for example, in Muslim societies from the 18th and 19th century, particularly extensive documentation shows that men's attraction to boys was considered as natural as their attraction to women. So you remember his debate from a couple of months ago with Naria, where he was arguing that, women need to veil because men can't control their urges. Well, why weren't boys being veiled in Islamic societies if men couldn't control their urges? I mean, has he considered that maybe boys?
You could tell he got very upset during the debate when you did that too. He got really defensive and like, what Muslim country allows this to happen? And like,
right here, it's on the screen.
I was I'm not going to name any names or anything, but I know a woman who was working with 5 Pakistani men and got to, they'd have conversations and so on. But, she could tell that some of them were a little troubled by something that had happened. She ended up getting into discussions with them. And turns out all of them had been molested by older men when they were boys, and they all thought it was completely normal because it was apparently just completely standard in Pakistan. And having these discussions with them, she found out they don't consider that homosexual. If it's a boy before he's actually a man, they don't consider it homosexual, and so. You're fine. You're fine with the boy. If it's the man, you have to. If you're a man and you have sex with a man, you have to die. But if he's a boy, we're going to look the other way because it's not really gay.
Just to be clear, real quick, the only reason I brought up Bruce Ryan is because this has been Daniel's source for like 4 years now. I wouldn't have brought him up at all because he doesn't talk about child marriage, but because no one's citing him for 4 years, I'll cite what he says to show that Daniel's not been aware of his own research. I mean. I would never have brought up Bruce Ryan in this debate because he doesn't talk about child marriage. And again, he's an outlier. He does not represent mainstream psychology.
There is a long history in many Muslim cultures, including 2 cultures that Dan and Kikichu is actually very familiar with, which are Pakistan and Afghanistan. I'm pretty sure he's familiar with the history of Afghanistan, where also the whole boy loving, where older men used little boys for entertainment and also for sexual purposes, was a very common cultural thing. It was then battled, and they tried to somehow get rid of it, but it's still in existence. And similar traditions have been around in many Muslim countries. And the funny thing is, as David points out, that is not seen as being gay or as homosexuality. That is seen as something different, like appreciating the beauty of a young boy. And
Look at IP's face. Look at this.
I can't even.
This is what I love, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, if he hadn't been around some of the horrible stuff that these guys were saying, he would have just kept on making his, nice videos about Bible topics and responding to atheists. But he gets disgusted actually hearing what some of these guys are saying. So he actually posts a response, and then they don't know enough because they have one methodology of dealing with critics, which is just like, we'll shower you with so much threats and abuse and so on that you'll stop talking about Muhammad. And they never understand. I've said it repeatedly when it happens. Like, do you guys really not understand personality types? Yes, some people you can shower them with threats and abuse and they'll stop whatever they're doing. Other people, it has the exact opposite effect. They're like, wait, what? You think you can stop me like that? And they come after it more. And so they're like creating this monster for destroying Islam. And they don't realize it.
Yeah, wild stuff, man. Anyway, the original plan here was actually that we would watch the debate and then talk.
You might need to do like 8 lives. You might need to do like 8 live streams, AP, to get through all this stuff.
I know, but I want to say, I said this before in my community tab. I said this on different occasions, but I mean, it is this debate. It was fantastic. I think you did an amazing job. You confronted the guy and his very sick mindset head on, exposed him and his mindset before everybody, before the hundreds of thousands of people who will probably see that. And you have destroyed it. You have absolutely destroyed it. You have crushed it. And to be very honest, I usually don't want to use these sentiments to describe what goes on in a debate, but it was you publicly humiliated the guy and made him look like a complete idiot. Aside from
humiliated.
Also he looked disgusting. The comment section is full of people being disgusted and in disbelief about the things that he says, which, by the way, he thinks is good because he is actually representing the true good morality. But people are also appalled by how stupid his justifications were and how horrible his comebacks were and how he was entirely unable to perceive some basics. For example, one of my favorites was when he thought he got you by bringing up fornication and adultery. Which so what happens is you are against child marriage and you think it should be banned because it is immoral and it is absolutely wrong. And then he's like, so Mike, are you also against fornication and are you also against adultery? And why do you not want to outlaw those?
Yeah,
why do you want to outlaw child marriage instead? See,
you've been humiliated.
It's like he can't even think through the logic to realize how dumb of an argument that is. Like, do I really need to explain it to you? Like, think about this for a little while.
Along those lines, AP, this has happened twice. This has happened twice in a row. We've talked about this before, that a Muslim apologist can become popular as a debater by having a certain methodology that works against certain people. So Zakir Hussain would just make stuff up about Hebrew and stuff like that. But if he's debating people who don't know Hebrew, he can make up anything he wants. And his own followers don't care if he's making stuff up. So he would debate people who don't know any better. And so he's been doing that for years. Suddenly he decides, hey, let me debate a scholar of ancient Near Eastern languages who happens to know the script, the Christian scriptures better than every Muslim on the planet combined. Let me use that methodology against him. And it's like, no, that you should have avoided that at all costs. Only go against people who don't know what you're talking about and who can't refute what you're saying. Under no circumstances do you expose your methodology to someone who can destroy it. But that's the same thing here. Daniel has this, this scamming abstracts of articles methodology, but the people he's talking to generally aren't familiar with any of those studies. So he can say whatever he wants. They don't know any better. but you don't use that methodology against someone who's going to read all of those studies and who's going to be able to point out that you don't know what you're talking about. You've completely misrepresented them. And so it's like, IP is like the last person in the world he should have used that methodology against. And yet that's the guy he challenged on this topic. He challenged the one guy on the planet who would actually go through all those sources and be able to expose them. And it's like, what are you guys doing? What, like, how do you?
And to be fair, he went into this knowing, though, I mean, Michael told me this a month and a half ago or something, that he had this quote and he's like, this guy's been using this quote, like, totally out of context, and it has nothing to do with like child brides and like marrying off and like pro that. It has nothing to do with that. And he can't wait because he was like, I mean, is the guy secretly closeted homosexual and he doesn't want to like let his cat out of the bag or something? I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's the thing. After the first time that I talked to Daniel Kikic and had a discussion with him, I did a terrible job in preparing for that, and I actually just wanted him to explain his ideas without having a back and forth debate with him. I only later sat down and actually studied his methods and things that he does. And one thing that I did was he kept repeating to me one book, which was War Before Civilization. Yeah, War Before Civilization. He mentioned that book as supporting his whole idea of a primitive societies doing all those primitive things that he is for. And that book actually explains how those things were totally good and advantageous for societies and all that. So what I did was just I bought that book and got it and read through it, and I realized that the book is in no way supportive of what he's actually trying to tell me. It is basically depicting the past as savages and depicting the past as people who out of necessity did things that no longer are should be done. Or
he makes me think like this is his logic, AP. Like he finds that beating your wife is something that is like ubiquitous in the tradition. Maybe they find something in the Quran that hints at it, and then it's like, can I find a study that comes close to saying something that sounds like something, and then be like, actually, did you know it reinforces structure within the household, which allows stability of civilization and the reproduction of manhood, which helps womenhood. In fact, it's actually an equal rights thing that you beat your wife. It's actually a good thing, and I've studied it from Hakashamakas' book. You never read that? Like, well, you know what I mean? Like,
that's the same with his book. He cites this book by M. Stephen Fish called Are Muslims Distinctive? And I read it on a plane like back in like February or something. And yeah, you get to chapter 7 and do you really want to talk about what's in chapter 7 on gender and class inequality in Muslim countries? Because it's really bad for women and for people that are not of the upper class. It just basically shows that women in Muslim countries have lower literacy rates, less education, and lower life expectancy. It's like, why would you cite this book? This is not good. Like, oh my goodness. It's like, this is something like, if I, like this is something he would not want his opponent to know about.
It's funny. He always, he very often in his debates when he responds to the people who make their opening statements, he says that they are gish galloping, and that's just such a huge way of projecting what you are actually doing. And because that's what he does. That's what he did in his opening statement with you. He just randomly threw out source after source after source after source of things that have nothing to do with what he's actually saying. And so that is gish galloping. That is what he's describing. That is what he accuses his opponent of doing. And in your debate, you actually concisely, extensively, showed the studies on screen and made your points properly. And what he did was gish galloping by presenting all kinds of things that he entirely took out of context that did not support him at all.
Well,
and that is his method.
You got to remember is that I was texting you and David months ago where I was saying, I'm going to upload some videos on Aisha where I'm going to specifically use arguments I know Daniel will have an easy time addressing. I'm going to make him think I'm going to argue like, just like the typical secular liberal that he always argues for. And I'm going to hold back all the studies I found until then, because I want him to think this will be an easy debate for him. And so just now that I'm letting the cat out of the bag now, those videos I uploaded to like TikTok and Instagram were specifically designed to make Daniel think that I had weaker arguments than what I actually had. I
They
was
were bait.
wrapping my brain around for weeks, or for not weeks, but hours trying to figure out what are arguments I can put out that would be good, but not my best. And that's why I kept all my studies back, because I wanted him to think this would be an easy debate for him. And yeah, he's arguing for child marriage, so no sympathy. I mean, like, this is not going to be something I'm going to be like, trying to give him any sort of, leg up. Anyway.
Poor guy. How could you do this to him? Poor guy.
Well, don't think about children here.
So here's one comment that I saw from somebody who at least claims to be a Muslim. Said, as a Muslim, I'm really embarrassed by what Daniel has said in this debate. I really don't know what to say about this. And I'm sure people can relate. I mean, if I was still a Muslim the way I was a Muslim, I would have probably listened to what Daniel Kikuchu was saying, and I would have been disgusted by the way he argued. And to be honest, I would have probably sat down later and thought about the things that he said and compared my actual beliefs and sources with the things that he said, and maybe that would have led me to leave Islam again in a different way. But
I got a comment for you, AP.
A lot of Muslims are expressing these feelings as well. Let's see that. As a Muslim, I am ashamed of Daniel's position on this issue and embarrassed by his explanation. We do not endorse this man nor child marriage, which is an act that the Quran forbids clearly. Well, correction, the Quran does not forbid such a thing. But, yeah.
This is very interesting because you have the it's definitely not all Muslims, but the people who follow their particular da'i are just conditioned over time to cheer for whatever he says. This goes, I mean, this has always been something in Islam. But I mean, I heard from Christians in India that when Zakir Naik would debate in one of his couple debates, that a ton of the Muslims who showed up to the debates would be people who don't even speak English. They don't even know what he's saying. They're just trained to, they're told to cheer like crazy whenever he raises his voice in a certain way and so on. So they're cheering. They don't even know what he's saying. But more recently, the rise of this, the online da'is and so on, no matter what happens in a debate, just cheer for him. Oh my goodness, he totally humiliated this guy and so on. And they're doing that now. And so notice, if you condition people over a period of years, hey, whatever our guy says, however he performs, just cheer him on and say he smashed the other guy and so on. Just keep doing that. Okay, what about when he's defending child marriage and so on? Yeah, just say he completely destroyed the other guy. And yes, alhamdulillah, he gave the great defense of child marriage, not realizing there are all these people out there who are on the fence or who didn't know about any of this and so on. And now it's not David Wood and the apostate prophet saying that Islam supports child marriage. It's their new champion of dawah saying it. And all the people, there are plenty of people who, when I say it or when AP would say it, they would say, I can't trust you. I can't trust the kuffar. I can't trust the next Muslim. I can't trust this guy. But who now, wait, what do you do when your champions of dawah say it? And then you see thousands of their followers praising Allah for him defending child marriage. Now it's no longer us. And so now all these people who would have had the option to think, well, maybe we're making it up. How do you say this guy's making it up and all his followers are falling for it? So they don't realize what's going on. They've just horrified a lot of people. Yes, your followers may think that's great. Your followers may think you did a great job, but you just announced to the world that this is the religion of child marriage. And everyone's going to notice, and that's
the thing. I've been saying it for a while, David. You know it. Daniel Kikuchu is personally my favorite, my go-to Islamic apologist that I want to help popularize. I like that he is out there. I like that he represents Islam and makes all his defenses. I have, I have personally suggested him to Michaela Peterson. I told her about him. I said, hey, invite him to your podcast, invite him to your dad's podcast, let him explain Islam to you guys. I told them that, I told them that in private and in public as well.
We should secretly fund him.
Oh my gosh.
I would mirror his videos and publish them on my own channel just to have him speak.
Well, I think he'd work great in the West, but like David said, like along with the rest of the apologists we see going on, like they just have a crowd that's like, he's our team. No matter what he says, he's our team. I saw a debate a long time ago between Dan Barker and Richard Carrier, like back in the 90s or late 90s, when their only debate they ever debated Muslims. They went to Michigan. Richard said it was crazy. He's never experienced anything like that. But he sat there and the guy tried like making this argument. And he's like, who could say life came from water? The Quran says, and he quotes some surah, and then he turns around and the audience gets like, woo! And then all of a sudden he turns and goes, well, Thales said that in 1500, like, and he like quoted some Greek freaking philosopher, and then the whole audience was like, oh crap. Like it was just like they cheered him on no matter what, because they're like, you win. And it's like, you didn't even hear the other guy say anything yet, and you're already saying who won.
Hey, AP, I want to put one thing on the screen here. You might find this kind of funny. This is one of Bruce Ryan's sources in the paper I cited, and I just love the title of this. This is from 1997. This is one of the sources he was using on all the homosexual activity in Islamic societies. The strip tease that was blamed on Abu Bakr's naughty son. Was the father being shamed, or was the poet having fun? Homoeroticism in classical Arabic literature.
That actually rhymes. The title rhymes. Naughty son having fun.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in that, and there's a lot. Daniel should never have mentioned Bruce Ryan if he read his stuff. Just the what it opens you up to, the stuff that you can now find to critique Islam. He should never have wanted his critics to find this stuff. Like ex-Muslims should read this now and use it against them.
That's the same thing with like Kenny Bomer bringing up Joshua Little. It's like that guy. If you believe what that guy says, I mean, he destroys the entire foundation of your religion by just ripping your sources apart. And it's like, why would you go? It's just, hey, anything that we can use for some specific purpose at a moment in time, regardless of how damaging it would be to our case otherwise, we'll roll with it. And that's the methodology.
Here's what's funny about all of this. Now, Daniel Hikikiju, when he had a debate with Harris Sultan a while ago, was it a year ago or so? I don't know. Somebody among the viewers asked a question to Harris Sultan, and the question was something along the lines of which books of Islamic legal jurisprudence have you actually read? And Harris's answer to that was something like, I've read a few pamphlets. And that bit was mocked to death by Daniel Hikikiju and his audience. Like, look at him. He talks about Islam and Islamic morality, but he hasn't even read one single book on Islamic jurisprudence. He has only read pamphlets, which, by the way, Harris Sultan said, well, maybe a few pamphlets. He kind of said as a way of like, I don't need to read those things. I just need to read the pamphlets. I don't have to study those things in order to understand that Islam is dumb and immoral and all that. But here we have Daniel Hikikiju now, in contrast to that, making such a mockery of Harris Sultan not reading books and only reading pamphlets. Here he is, not reading the things that he himself cites, and then also on camera in the middle of a debate, when you quote from the study, he says, let's read the abstract.
Yeah, I read the actual
abstract
study.
Only. Abstract. We'll call it abstract only research.
Yeah, everything I think he cited in relation to this, I've read. So I've read the Anthropology of Childhood. Now I've read Are Muslims Distinctive? I've read a lot of Bruce Ryan studies. I disagree with a lot of what he says because again, he's an outlier. But Daniel says things that even Bruce Ryan does not say, and does not point that a lot of what Bruce Ryan is trying to defend is man-boy attraction.
Right.
That's mostly what he's doing. It's not the heterosexual aspect, and he never once even brings up child marriage.
One thing I did want to ask you that I thought about during your debate, he kept trying to bring up, like, show me the studies on child marriage, as if like he was saying there is no. Yeah. Can you address that now that you have time and nobody's going to step on you and like constantly interrupt you? Like, what he's trying to get at there, it sounds like he's trying to say, you can't show statistics of negative impact from child marriages. And I just think about the FLDS. I mean, do I need to go any further than to know this is not good?
Well, I mean, that was my whole opening statement, was all of the data that shows this is harmful. I mean, this is not even debated among experts. He was trying to compare it to like children who have transgender surgeries, and like saying, well, there's, but if you actually look at that, like, for example, there's an article called Gender Dysphoria is Rising and So is Professional Disagreement. Okay, this was published this year, points out that researchers are disagreeing. They're saying there's not enough data on this yet to know what to do. So he's comparing apples to oranges. All the researchers agree child marriage is harmful. We've got dozens of studies that have studied this for years. But I mean, like, for him to make this comparison shows he's not really done the research on child marriage. And this is why, here, I'll just share my screen here again. We can just go back through a lot of my opening slides where it just I basically just point out all of the data. Yeah, let's just go back through these slides here.
What's funny is your opening statement is you presenting evidence that child marriage is harmful and bad. And as far as I remember, in his opening marriage, he argues that his opponents who are against child marriage don't have any evidence and don't have any pre-modern scholars, but only argue from a modern, by modern standards, which is a complete lie. You just, in your opening statement, right before he made his opening statement, proved him wrong already by citing pre-modern scholars and by giving evidence that it is harmful. It is so idiotic. I don't even understand.
Well, I started with all the studies here. Like, this is one I used, and I use this one in specific because I didn't want him. I use this article specifically because it's looking at rural communities, and these are people that are going to be furthest away from Western influence. And this is in India, for example. And they note that child marriage is associated with all these harmful outcomes for the children. It's also very harmful for the girls. I mean, it bereaves young girls of their childhood by overburdening them with domestic responsibility, motherhood, sexual relations. They're psychologically not prepared for childbirth. Maternal morbidity is really high with them. The immaturity and lack of education of young mothers undermines their capacity to understand and realize the importance of such practices for the nurturing and upbringing of their children. Then there was this other study done by a obstetrician. She compiled a bunch of research showing that all of the negative consequences. And I brought this study up later in the debate because she actually notes that that with child mothers, we see an increase in STDs and cervical cancer. So he's trying to say we need child marriages to decrease promiscuity. But actually, when a husband has a child bride, he's very likely to go out and have multiple affairs. And she can't rein in his sexual behavior because she's a child. And so there's just so much data that shows, in this paper specifically, of all the harmful effects. But then I even went beyond that and I cited reviews. So this is a specific one.
As you can see, the opponents of child marriage, who are human rights extremists, have no evidence at all and are only arguing from a modernist point of view and appealing to emotions, as you can clearly see here.
I love that you're bringing data. You're bringing facts, observable, testable data, and not just bringing up tradition. We all have, and we can all go into the ancient world and find stuff and go, we didn't know what we know now. Cool.
Exactly.
We have good reasons to throw away certain things or say, okay, let's maybe not judge the ancients for what they thought at the time. But in this case, your ancient is supposed to be the ever-present example in which we all follow. And then you're pushing forward these ideas. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I cited these reviews specifically because this paper specifically, like this one and another one I cited, these are not studies. They're reviewing individual studies and they're compiling the research to go, overwhelmingly, we find plenty of evidence that this is harmful. But with regard to the past, I also cited this research pointing out that in the past, in ancient Rome and among the Jews, they were actually marrying later. They were not having children at 12. Muhammad is an extreme exception with a 9-year-old. Most people understood it's better to wait until you're 18, your late teens, even early 20s. Like this one says, like this is Michael Satlow, who points out a 20-year-old Jewish woman from Egypt who died while apparently betrothed is described as ripe for marriage, like a rose in a garden nurtured by fresh rain. So so why would we think that Mary was like 13? I mean, like in Palestine, again, it was like late teens, early 20s. And I didn't get the chance of this, but Daniel cites this guy called Joseph Heinrich to argue that, Westerners invented the nuclear family. Well, scholars like Michael Satlow and Amram Trooper actually no, nuclear families were actually existing in ancient Jewish and Roman structures, because by the time a man turned 25, his father was practically dead, and they had to find their own wife for the most part. And that's in Amram Trooper's paper. So, like, again, there's just so much data that shows that even ancient people understood, ancient and medieval people understood, you need to wait for a girl to become a woman before you expect her to have children, because they weren't idiots. They could observe easily these girls that were dying in childbirth. They had such high infant mortality rates, and they understood that women who had children older more likely survived probably from their own experience. And so this is why we see this in the research.
He doesn't understand that distinction, by the way. Derek, what you just mentioned. I mentioned to him before, when I talked about slavery, I said that I would not sit here and judge people in the past in times and environments where slavery was normal for engaging in slavery, for having slaves and buying and selling slaves and all of that. I wouldn't be sitting here and judging Muhammad if he was just a random historical person.
Right.
But I have to judge in this case because Muhammad is not just a random person from history. He's supposed to be the perfect moral guide for all humanity. And I also told him that I think slavery is historically justified, and explicable, but it is nevertheless still abhorrent and should be opposed, especially in today's time. He thinks this whole idea is a contradiction because I oppose.
Because that's ridiculous. Because I mean, do I need to spell this out? It's relevant.
Yeah. Apparently,
it's relevant. It's like saying this: we know the pharaohs, like the kings of Egypt, literally, like generation after generation, were incestual. Okay, they literally were incestual. They kept the bloodline as pure as really got not pure by doing that, but anyway, pure, and they ended up becoming deformed and not being able to be sexually active, eventually having to cut the lines off. Like, if there were modern people running around saying we need to be like the pharaohs, and that means you need to marry and be with your brother, whoever the sister is here, and you like literally were perpetrating that as a modern belief and practice, then we have a problem. You can judge the ancient, but I'm not going to sit here. I could judge anyone in the ancient world. I just don't have any use for it. If I'm going, hey, they were in their time and their space and this and that. But even then, I've actually had the question, and I mean, David might know the answer, and AP, you probably ran across this too. I'd love to get your thoughts. Was it even socially acceptable even for him in that time in the 7th century to do that with a child at that age, Aisha? I don't know.
I don't know what the standard was in Arabia, but if you're going on Christian, European, Roman standards of the time, no. And if I didn't have time to get to these were additional slides I was going to use if I had the time. But he tried to argue that, most girls were having their period so early. Even Kenny in David's debate brought it up. Like Daniel made a really good argument that girls were having their period at 9 at that time. No, I have 2 studies here. So Evo Devo and human adolescence, and this other one, evolution, development, and the timing of puberty. They note that, look, so you go 2,000 years ago versus 200 years ago. So Muhammad is going to be like right in there sometime. They note that the age of menarche, when girls were having their first period, was delayed. It wasn't happening at 9. The earliest it could have happened was maybe 10 or 11, but that would have been exceptionally rare. Average you're going to have is around 14, 15. This other paper says, thus by medieval times, the average age of menarche was deferred to 16.5, as it remains today among underprivileged adolescents in developing countries. So this idea that these girls, like in Muhammad's time, were having their periods at 9 left and right, no, that would have been exceptionally rare. If Aisha did, she would have been an example of precocious puberty. It would have been exceptionally rare.
Yeah, David, what do you think? You have been very quiet, although you always talk a lot.
I still can't get back. I don't know. I just can't get past the fact that this is a debate. Like of all the things, I mean, if you were a Muslim da'i, a Muslim speaker, debater, whatever, I mean, wouldn't you want to be having debates on showing that Muhammad's a true prophet and that the Quran is a miracle or something like that? Daniel's
Man,
like, no,
I think this
child
is
marriage, dang it, child marriage and wife beating.
I think this is amazing. I said this before, but isn't it funny how whenever Islam is mentioned in controversy in online discussions, it comes up with stuff like this, with intolerance, with aggressiveness, with beheading, with beating women, mistreating them. Now, child marriage. This is a very common, very popular one. Very often, when Islam is publicly discussed, there is a heated debate. It is about child marriage. So this is the kind of stuff that comes up when we talk about Islam, when we discuss Islam on the internet. I think that's amazing.
There it is, right there. This debate may have awoken something in me, and I might have to start going after Islam in the future.
Yeah, and that's where Daniel challenged.
Yeah, right then, I was thinking, if they respond by heaping insults and abuse on him, this is not going to go. It's not going to go well. But yeah, that's the direction they went in.
This is their making.
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. Again, this whole child marriage debate was his idea. The day he posted this, I stopped whatever I was doing and I read like 3 hours worth of studies on child marriage. And I was like, okay, this will be an easy win. And I was like waiting for him to like send me or like thing like, let's have the debate. And I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, why not? He never happened. So I was eventually like, James, make it happen. Like I was like he's not actually sending me anything to actually set up the debate.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, isn't it weird that like Kenny Bomer challenged me? I didn't challenge. He challenged me, and then Daniel challenges you. And then we end up with back-to-back debates on child marriage.
Hey, you know what was good about that?
But you get both of the major positions, because there's two directions you go. You can either defend child marriage, or you can say no, it actually never happened, and that's all a bunch of lies from later on. And so we got to deal with like both major positions on this really sick.
You know what was funny? I got the end of the debate between Matt Dillahunty and that other Muslim guy who's saying something, and Matt Dillahunty made a remark towards the end, which was something like, the remaining two debates today are about whether it's okay to rape children. And so he made that remark, and he emphasized that repeatedly about Islam.
Well, Matt actually came up to me before the debate, and he was like, "Am I right in assuming that the next two debates after mine are if we or not have sex with children?" And he used more vulgar language, and I just sort of looked at him and was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "The Muslims are arguing in favor of this." I'm like, well, one of them is, at least I know that.
I'm a bit confused. So Kenny's taking the position. He's taking more. He feels the pressure is all I got to say, right? Yeah. Morally, he sees what we see.
He's not like this. Yeah, like this. He actually is trying to argue that maybe the later texts were corrupted or something.
Although, see, there's always this ongoing question when someone is saying something. It's like, do you just have an incorrect view on this, or are you lying? Right? Because there are lots of Muslims who, if you say something they disagree with, they'll say you're lying, and it's like you need to be clear on lying. If someone actually thinks that what they're saying is correct, but they're wrong, then they're wrong, but they're not lying. So when Kenny is interpreting his sources as not claiming that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl, there's a question: is he lying, or is he just really, he feels the pressure, as you put it, he feels the pressure to of this issue, and so he does actually want a way out of this issue. But then when he was quoting Joshua Little, I mean, it was just look, there are two possibilities. You either didn't read that, or you're lying, because there's no way to interpret this as what you're saying. So you haven't read it, or you're lying. And he says he's read it and he's right. And so that's the situation where, now you're in the deceiver category. Now mentally I have you in the deceiver category. Can't trust anything you say. But it was the same thing with Daniel. Now seeing how he treats sources, completely misrepresenting every single, I don't recall him accurately citing anything where I could verify it. And so it's now, now it's not just, you have abhorrent views, but this is what you're trying to get to the truth, but you've got these abhorrent views. It's now I think you're deliberately trying to deceive your listeners, and it's wild stuff.
Well, here's a good example. This is a good example. He's constantly saying we need to have a society that decreases divorce. Well, I mean, studies show that if you marry, look at the ages there at the bottom, 10, 20, 30. The studies show that when you marry in your teens, you're far more likely to get divorced. So why would he be encouraging child marriages if they're far more likely to end in divorce?
Okay, what does the abstract say that?
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Hey, abstract, show it in the abstract or shut up. Abstract or nothing, baby.
Oh God.
Here's one issue that also came up previously. The XXWZXX said Tom Holland's book The Shadow of the Sword says that the Arabs were likely highly Romanized, so the likelihood of 9 years being acceptable is low. Now, I have heard different views on this as well from scholars, but so what I have heard, David, correct me. I don't know if have you ever heard anything about this, but what I have read on this so far is that it may have been quite normal in the pre-Islamic period to marry off your daughters as a means to increase your family, to secure your family line. So as soon as a girl is born, and in the years as she's developing as a child, the girl is already married off and assigned to somebody. And then at some point later, the marriage is consummated. And I'm not sure if there was ever a lower limit where they say
you're onto something. Well, if you read Kim Phillips' book, Medieval Maidens, she's talking about that a little. She uses several examples about girls that were married young in medieval Europe, but their fathers are specifically putting in the clauses, you cannot consummate the marriage with my daughter until she's 18 or 16. Mm-hmm. They're putting these age limits. So yeah, there's sometimes you're having these marriages happen among the higher classes, but they're also saying consummation can't happen until much later. And then, even children should come even after a period after that.
The thing is, we're talking about pre-Islamic Arabia, which by many, it is so hard to study pre-Islamic Arabia that there is very little in terms of text that you can actually that survives that you can study in order to further understand how people lived and what they thought in pre-Islamic Arabia. It was severely underdeveloped. It only served as a place of nomadic tribes trading and traveling and occasionally attacking the north and all that. But one of the views is that it was common to marry off your children, and then consummation was a matter that is then defined or decided by the parents. But the issue is, my issue with this is it doesn't even matter to me whether this was a common practice in pre-Islamic Arabia or not. What matters to me is that we are talking about Muhammad as the central figure of Islam, who, according to Islamic teachings, clearly is the perfect guide for all humankind, a person of excellent character, according to the Quran, and someone that every Muslim should follow, which is why people like Daniel Hikikichu come today and defend his actions, including defending child marriage and pedophilia. So that's what matters to me. I don't really care. I don't really consider it such a huge factor whether it was normal in his time or not.
IP, did you ever talk to him about the difference between? I mean, did he ever try to delineate between what pedophilia is and child marriage? Did he ever?
Boy, he did that to me.
He's done that in the past, and then it's ironic he's quoting Bruce Ryan, because Bruce Ryan is the one actually arguing that the pedophilic interactions between men and boys is not that bad, and then he goes like. And then he'll cite Bruce Ryan and go, well, Bruce Ryan, for example, points out that this isn't harmful for children that are put in these marriages. What is harmful, though, is when little kids are diddled in closets. Well, why are you citing Bruce Ryan? Like, I've seen him do this in like his Harris Sultan debate, as well as with UAP. It's one of those weird things where it's like he's claiming that pedophilia interaction is harmful, but then he'll cite Bruce Ryan, who argues that it isn't harmful. And it will say that Bruce Ryan supports him, that they should actually be married off of that. It's like there's so many bad arguments in those short phrases. It's hard to even keep up with it all.
Yeah. Michael Jones destroyed Pikachu, said Landon. I don't want to be juvenile and refer to him as Pikachu. Although.
No, it's his new nickname is Takia-Chu.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I like him as somebody who exposes Islam more than Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa. I know we have our disagreements here, David. You are more a fan of Muhammad Hijab. I am more a fan of Daniel Kikuchi because I think Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa, they can be deceptive and still, be like they can lie and twist things in front of the public. Daniel Kikuchi, he doesn't care. He will just say whatever he believes and thinks, and it is glorious. It's amazing.
Hey,
what
hey,
June
hey,
said.
Hey, I think Derek said he has to go soon earlier, so
I don't care.
But we can
I
continue.
knew he didn't give a crap, man.
We can continue reading comments and stuff, but yeah, we can continue. So Derek, if you need to bolt.
I just wanted you to read the abstract for my exit, if you don't mind. You guys, seriously though, I want to say thank you for letting me come hang out. I wanted it to be a fair fight, meaning 4 of us on the same team. Because too often we I'm always arguing different things, and this is one of those issues that was so serious, so big of a deal. I have been rooting behind the scenes Michael's upcoming debate here, and proud of you, man. I really am. I'm so glad that you went and did such a good job, even if we have our disagreements. I know AP has disagreements with David. You and me, we've had conversations, but I think we're showing that through all of that, friendship's there, and we have common ethics. So,
well, I agree, and I think at some point in the future, if this gets worse, I think the Muslim apologists are destroying themselves before our eyes with telling us what they believe. But if it gets out of hand, there's going to be a point where atheists and Christians need to unite against a common evil, where we need to just protect children.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Well, you see?
No, he did not. No, he did not.
You didn't see what he actually did with that on a previous live stream.
I didn't.
I don't see that.
We did exactly what Muhammad Hijab was saying. Was that Muhammad Hijab?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh yeah. It was in his video. Yeah. He Muhammad Hijab was saying that if you're a Quran only Muslim and you read the verse about striking your wife, he said it's the same verse for striking the necks. I mean, it's the same word that's used of striking the necks of your enemy in battle. So if you didn't have the hadith to sort of moderate your wife beating, you would think that you could just saw your wife's head off if she disagrees with you. And so we reenacted what he was saying.
Yeah.
Did you use a doll or something?
Yeah, I did it on a teddy. I did it on a teddy bear.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not shocked anymore. I'm not shocked anymore. But look, I really appreciate you guys. Let's do this again.
Yeah, we will do that. We shall do that. Thank you, man. Thank you for coming.
Man. Thank you.
Okay. Finally, now he's gone.
I think Mike Jones has to go too, don't you?
Yeah, I got 5 more minutes at least. And then I'm gonna take off. Yeah, we'll go through a couple more comments, and then
the night has only just begun. Let me see if there are questions for you specifically. Nobody knows who you are, but maybe some people actually.
Well, that's why I do these debates.
Kevin said, "IP, you're genuinely one of the greatest Christian apologists I have ever seen. You're on par with William Lane Craig."
Wow, that's really impressive. That's very honorable. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't think I can agree, but I do appreciate it. That's quite a compliment.
Very nice.
I would say Craig is the best on the topics he deals with, but on the stuff, the kinds of things that IP deals with, he's obviously the best. So.
WW said, "I love the debate. Not only did IP smash Daniel, but his arguments were super informative and educational. I actually learned a lot from him."
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to hear. I want people to realize how damaging child marriage is and think twice. Because I know Daniel's got a lot of followers outside of the U.S. and in Africa and Asia. I hope some of his followers that were maybe more moderate will think twice about subjecting their daughters to something like this. I hope that actually happens.
I have to say this again. I said this before, and I'm not exaggerating at all. I watched a lot of debates between Muslims and non-Muslims about Islam. I have myself had debates and discussions with these people. David had a lot of that stuff. David and I both thought that you would be the perfect person to have this debate with Daniel Kikichu. And seeing the debate, having seen the debate, seeing the results of it, I think, without exaggeration, with all honesty, this was the best ever destruction of an Islamist and his beliefs and perspectives that I have ever witnessed. This is the best that happened in a debate. So, mad respect, fantastic job. I think it was amazing.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, it's all for honestly, it's all for protecting the innocent and trying to combat these horrible practices like child marriage. That's honestly what kept me going in these months. Just for this.
It's not about protecting the innocent. It's about you siding with Western liberalism.
Yeah,
atheists.
The liberals and the atheists and the Christians.
It's the only reason for you saying any of this.
That's why child marriage is good. That's why Muhammad is good. See?
You see? Now convert to Islam.
Christian Metalhead said, won't be able to watch live, but wanted to say that IP and the Dizzle did an awesome job in their respective debates. Much love to the four of you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see if there are any more addressed to anyone for IP here.
It's absolutely ridiculous when when Muslims think that like Christianity is like Islam, like diet Islam. It's not. Here's the thing. Islam is very much a system that's built around order, authority, loyalty, preserving certain ways. Christianity is a system, a religious system that was built to topple systems and institutions that didn't prize equality, freedom, care for those who need it. This is why we see it creating revolutionary changes throughout the Roman Empire, throughout the Middle Ages, creating things like the abolitionist movements, fighting child marriages. And this comes from things like experts like Robert Woodbury, Tom Holland, Rodney Stark, as I had mentioned. And this is why we see secularism come out of Christianity, because once again, as people like Charles Taylor note, deists and atheists took ideas they got from Christianity, sort of like took and divorced them from the Christian beliefs and thought they could create a secular society without the Christian beliefs. So like Hakikichu is just absolutely wrong that Christianity was just like Islam before secularism came along. You got to read Tom Holland, read Charles Taylor. This is not the case at all.
Yeah. Connor said, T-Sply said, I made the mistake of watching this debate while eating. Yeshua King said, IP, can we get the PowerPoint?
Yeah. The best way to get it, message me through my website, inspiringphilosophy.org. And I already gave the slides to Daniel yesterday because he wanted to put my slides in his own version of the video. So more power. Oh, absolutely. Please do. Yeah, I want more people to see that.
Yeah.
Just email me.
IP, you might want to, since there are time constraints and so on, and interruptions and so on in a debate, you might want to put together just an hour-long video, 1 hour-long video going through all your studies, and you could use all your slides and so on like that, and give a complete case, because it's relevant. Because notice when people are saying, oh, Islam allows child marriage, that's horrifying, that needs to be stopped. If the Muslim fans of their da'is have been trained to say, but there are all these studies showing that you're wrong, I mean, people are going to need to be equipped to refute that stuff. So
absolutely, man. Absolutely. The Chelskin said, IP, you got destroyed. Alhamdulillah.
The cognitive dissonance has already set in.
Infidel Noodles said, I
will say for Infidel Noodle, I actually did use some of her stuff to help prepare for this. I watched some of her interviews where she's interviewing ex-Muslim women. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to try to get a female perspective of what it's like to be in Islam and leave it, to understand the harm this causes to women, because this is a thing about child marriage. So I actually did use some of her stuff to just try to get myself in the right psychological mindset to think about what it is for women to leave Islam. So I listened to some of her stuff on some bike rides I was doing back in the winter. So, I did enjoy her stuff for sure.
That's very, very nice. She does a great job. Although she's not very active, I wish she was more active, but she does a fantastic job as well as providing a woman's perspective on things. The gang is all here. Aisha had no kids. This isn't about fertility. That's the thing.
Good separate point.
Yeah.
that's the thing that I always think of whenever Daniel brings up fertility. I mean, Muhammad had all these wives, and fertility was not the point, right?
Mhm.
He didn't have a. You're muted. You're muted, Mike. You're muted.
Oh, Daniel basically had to admit that in the debate when I said, like, but you're saying you can have sex with a girl before she even reaches the age of ovulating and menstruating. So it's not about fertility. This is not about maximizing fertility. This is about your sadistic pleasure and just using girls for that. That's what this is about. Let's be honest. If you're saying you can have sex with a girl before she starts ovulating and menstruating, then it's never been about maximizing fertility. So that's a lie.
But he said you have to secure the female as soon as possible. You know, that's what he said, didn't he?
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and but I mean, notice for Aisha at least, marriage to Muhammad reduced the fertility because Muhammad, I mean, apart from Khadija and his sex slave Mary the Copt, none of his other wives became pregnant. And since Aisha wasn't allowed to get married after him, she had to be childless her entire life, specifically because she married Muhammad when she was 6, and therefore she was doomed to never having a child ever.
One thing that was funny was when he asked you about banning fornication between between kids or teenagers. He asked you, why do you not want to ban? And you let him down. And he said, okay, let's talk about this. How do you want to ban it? What do you want to do? How do you want to punish them? And he's like, I don't know.
Exactly.
Throw them in prison.
Well, it's so funny. He's like, you don't have any solutions. So when I bring up like a problem with his system, he doesn't have any solutions either. Like, they're 10-year-olds. They can't consent. They're not committing crimes because they don't know what they're doing. This is ridiculous. Throw them in prison. He wants to throw 10-year-olds in prison for making out. The double standard of Hakikachu is like, you don't have any solutions to teen promiscuity. Well, you don't have any solutions apparently either. You think they should be thrown in juvie? Like,
of course he has a solution.
We do have a solution. We'll bone them all.
Yeah.
We'll marry them and bone them all.
Yeah. Marry them off to 50-year-old man. Problem solved, man. Problem solved. Yep. Do you have to go? Yeah, I appreciate the hangout. I've had a bunch of people ask me to do interviews to review the debate. So I'm probably going to do more of these and just cover more because there's just so much to talk about. And everyone was really happy with the debate. So I'll probably do some more interviews this week on it because, there's a lot going on. Just to remind you again, we signed a non-competition agreement where after you cannot have any interviews about this debate with anybody else after having an interview here on this channel. So, yeah. Keep that in mind if you don't want to be sued. Awesome. Somebody said, IP, will you make longer videos about Islam? Answer that and then. Eventually, I'm going to start, it's going to be on the sociology. But there is some talk behind the scenes about me debating another big Muslim apologist eventually. And I'm not saying anything about it till it's announced, but I will use the data I have for that because, again, in researching this, I found a whole bunch of other data that can harm Islam overall and show sociologically it's just not a good system for humanity in a lot of ways. So, some stuff is in the works, and there might be some more debates happening next year. So get ready for that. Fantastic. If there are more questions to IP, you can always contact him. He's responsive, unlike David, who is very irresponsible when it comes to responding to people. And me as well. I try to be. I try. Yeah. And he will try to respond to you. And I'm sure he's busy and will do a lot of stuff in the future. And we will have him on here again. I think this debate was fantastic. There should be more of these debates. And I would like to see much more of this stuff. We should all just go. What do you think, David?
Up to you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I have to go. I have to go as well.
All right, bunch of losers.
There's still lots of super chats.
Just leave it running. I'll chat with people afterwards.
Okay.
No, just kidding.
Well, we can say bye to Mike, and then I can stay here and finish the super chats here.
All right. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Take care. All right. Now it's us again after everything that we have witnessed. So, what do you think, David? Thank you. Now let's go to the super chat.
We can actually. I mean, they are in a pretty difficult position, right? I mean, Muslim apologists are in a difficult position. It's either defend what your prophet did which is what Daniel does, and then you got to defend child marriage and say it's actually good and wonderful because Muhammad did it, or say he didn't do it, in which case you gotta throw all your sources under the bus, and you got to run to Western academics who will save you from the criticism by destroying the reliability of your sources. And so, man, this is not a good position to be in right now.
That's a ridiculous thing, isn't it? I mean, you come to the conviction for some very dumb reason that Islam is the true religion, or you were just born into it, and then you are left with the fact that your own religion clearly presents Muhammad as a moral example, but at the same time, somebody who did terrible things that are very hard to explain to a more enlightened audience. And then you are left with just dealing with that and somehow figuring out what to do with it and defending it. And you have to do that because you can't just change your mind and leave Islam. You can't just say, oh, well, you know what? It's apparently not that great. I was wrong. No, you have to defend it. And then you have to make a mess.
And yeah, for a long time, Muslim da'is operated in an atmosphere of complete ignorance. They could say whatever they want about Islam. And then now people are learning about it. What's weird is if they hadn't done this push for like dawah to Westerners, they would have eventually outnumbered everyone just by sheer like birth rates and so on. But they decided, we're going to go and we're going to attack Christianity, and we're going to say that there's all this evidence for Islam and all these scientific proofs and so on. And that worked for a while because no one knew anything better. No one knew what Islam actually teaches, so they could say whatever they wanted. And now we're getting to a stage where people are actually looking everything up and then going, whoa, hey, look what we actually found in your sources. And yeah, now they're dealing with the avalanche of apostasy. And I think it's only going to get worse if now they're known as the religion of child marriage, which we always knew that's what it was, but they were denying it, and now they're embracing it.
I don't even understand. Daniel Kikuchu makes these debates and then actually invites the audience to Islam, and thinks he's under the impression that he actually convinces people to.
Yeah. I mean, like who's your target audience that you think this is going to impact, right? Like who do you think is in the audience is going like, wow, I never thought of that. Yeah, child marriage is really good. Where do I sign up for this?
Anyone here in the audience attracted to children? I have something for you. Please convert to Islam.
Have I got a religion for you?
Oh boy, man! But sometimes I feel like he's a secret agent from some Western agency that is paid to destroy Islam.
Yeah, it's like you have to think there's something else at work, right? I'm the same way, but I'm thinking like in a spiritual sense, like, has the Lord delivered you into our hands? Is that what happened? Has he like just has God made you do this to expose your religion? I don't know, but I just don't understand someone thinking in their heads and thinking rationally and thinking that this is a good idea. But here we are.
It's amazing, man. Anyway, Apollos Christian Apologetics said, Daniel, only the average population marry as adults. Apparently, the mere existence of a fringe nut job in society is a justification for Daniel. I know the whole thing is full of, I don't know, everybody should watch it. I could go through the whole thing again. Maybe I should do that on a separate live stream, by the way. But his reasoning is so stupid. His objections to somebody like Mike, to be very honest, I mean, I think Mike did an amazing job. He had a genius approach, strategy toward tackling Daniel Kikuchu. The guy is a genius. I don't know, man. After seeing this, I feel like the guy is a genius.
Isn't this weird though? Because I mean, Daniel could have challenged any of us on that topic, and we would have taken it, right? We would have done a debate on child marriage,
and none of us would have done such a good job.
Yeah, that's what I mean. None of us would have done. I mean, we would have found a study or two. We wouldn't have looked up everything Daniel has cited in the past and then researched those and then been able to discuss those and expose him so thoroughly. So it's like he challenged. And keep in mind, IP wasn't known as someone dealing with Islam. He's just ticked off. He was just ticked off at some stuff he was listening to. And then Daniel, I want to challenge this guy. This is the guy I want to challenge. And it is out of how many people are there in the world? 7-8 billion now. Like
Yeah.
out of all the people in the world, that is the last person you should have challenged, and that's the first person he wants to go to for this debate. So it's beautiful.
And he has been in touch with David and with me for months, ever since that whole idea of that debate came into existence. He has been corresponding with David and with me the whole time. We have texted and called each other, sent emails about things, and for months I have seen how he is preparing for it and how he is reading everything that Daniel has ever mentioned. It was bound to be brilliant.
This is I mean, and ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that we're not just talking about some horrible practice in the past. This isn't just an analysis of Muhammad. This still goes on. It's hard to actually end the practice, even though largely due to Western pressures, many Muslim countries now have laws against child marriage. It's hard for them to enforce those laws because they have to deal with the religious leaders who say, in effect, hey, if you're making laws against this or punishing people for doing this, you're going against Islam. And so you still have child marriage all over the place in the Muslim world. So,
yeah.
I mean, thanks to Mo, this practice is global. This evil is global.
Yeah. And Daniel wants to bring it back.
They still marry kids from Kabul to Mosul.
Yeah. And Daniel wants everybody to be able to marry kids. Saint Shovel Miracle Worker said, can you all address the argument that they got the teaching from Judaism, sages, rabbis? I have read a reference from Sage Rashi that 9-year-old is legal age. I wanted to address something about this whole thing separately. He made several references during his debate with Mike, where he said that the rabbinic tradition allows child marriage as early as 3 years old as well. I know that is false.
The most common thing I've seen, and I'm obviously no expert on the rabbinic sources and so on, but whenever I've looked into this, the most common position I've seen is that 12 was the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. You do have discussions about 3-year-olds and so on. I've heard, I can't verify this. I've heard that the discussion was that they actually had an odd belief that if someone did have sex with someone who was like 3, that they believed that person should still be that girl should still be counted a virgin because they had some belief about her hymen would be healed or something like that. And so you have these discussions. And just to be clear, you do have creepy positions from a lot of people. You do have creepy, not just among rabbis and so on. You could go and find creepy positions from people of all kinds of different perspectives and so on. But it's the fact that he's acting like this is just, hey, that's the position of rabbinic Judaism is 3 years old. No, it's not. The most common position I've seen was 12 as a minimum. But with that said, you can find a rabbi who has said pretty much anything, right? You could find some Christian thinker at some point who said all kinds of things, even if he's going against what the vast majority of other people would say. So you can find weird, creepy positions. What's disturbing is that the Muslim debater will go and look for that particular person. Why? To justify pedophilia, right? So they don't go and say, hey, what was the actual position, the most common position in Judaism? They'll look for someone who says something about a 3-year-old and then say, aha, you see, this is the position. Why? Because they're trying to justify pedophilia. And that it's the same thing with the Bible. Mary is called a woman. Rebecca is called a young woman. These are clearly not children. And yet, you saw it, Daniel, Kenny, they will point to those and say, you see, Rebecca was 3, Mary was 12. There's no way to get these positions from the sources. So why are you saying it? Why are you even making the claim? Well, the reason is they're trying to defend pedophilia, right? And it's like, guys, understand, okay, your prophet did it. Most other people did not do it. So stop falsely accusing everyone else of being like your prophet, being as bad as your prophet. It's disgusting.
Yeah, so the one reference that he makes, by the way, he also does this thing. He says in rabbinic law, age of 3 is okay, and this is also connected to Isaac and the age of Rebecca or something like that. He said during the debate, and the issue is those two things are entirely disconnected from each other. They have nothing to do with each other. The Talmud actually discusses about a hypothetical or a situation in which something was brought before a court of somebody who was married to a 3-year-old, and it discusses the technicality of that while not ever saying that it is okay to do this. And under Jewish law, historically, it has been known that the age of marriage is supposed to be around 12 or 13 or something like that, which I don't agree with at all, right? I don't agree with it at all. I think it's totally it's absurd and wrong. But the issue is what I believe or don't believe is not the point. The point here is that Daniel Hikichu keeps making these references to different sources while entirely twisting them and distorting them and then presenting them in such a way as if they somehow supported his own idea that it is okay to marry an infant and have sex with her as soon as she shows signs of maturity, which according to his statement in the debate, as we have also seen earlier, can be true if the girl shows signs of maturity at the age of 5 or 4 or even 3 or maybe even 11 months if the parents are okay with it. That's what he says and what he argues, what he implies. I mean,
and notice, I mean, it's so insane, but it's only impressive and persuasive to their crowd. But notice what they're trying to compare here. We go to Muslim sources, right? We go to Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. We ask them, hey, what are your best sources? What are your best sources on the life and teachings of Muhammad? Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. We go there and so okay, Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih al-Bukhari. We open it up. 9 years old. We keep reading. 9 years old. 9 years old. Aisha said she was 9 years old. And we could keep going through, right? Bukhari says she was 9 years old. You pick up Sahih Muslim. Sahih Muslim says she was 9 years old. 9 years old. And you keep going through them, right? Tabari says she was 9 years old. And you keep going through these sources and it's just everywhere, right? And then when we pointed out, hey, you've got all this stuff in your sources, 9 years old, 9 years old. Then the response is, but Mary was 12. Really? According to what? According to a completely misrepresented Catholic encyclopedia, right? We're going to completely, utterly, totally misrepresent what the Catholic encyclopedia says. And you say, okay, well, that's not really saying there's an unreliable, because the Catholic source, I mean, the Catholic encyclopedia specifically says this is unreliable. This is unreliable and apocryphal, and it has no authority. And then, but you represent that as, Mary was 12. And then you go to the story about Isaac and Rebecca, and there is no way any sane person could read that as Rebecca was 3. But you'll go to you'll search for some rabbi to say she was 3, when that is an absolutely insane way to read the text. No one in the history of humanity, apart from some guy you found, would ever read this text and say, this is talking about a 3-year-old girl. No one would ever conclude that. And yet they will. And so it's a situation where the reason we say that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl is not because we're taking something that one person said and twisting it and so on, or we found one weirdo who said it, and therefore we're going to say that that's the dominant position. It's because it's everywhere in all of your best sources. That's why we're claiming it. Do you have pedophilia is okay, and Rebecca was 3 and Mary was a child? Do you have that in our best sources clearly being stated? No, you don't. So these situations are just reversed. But it's just this weird position where they're looking for justifications for pedophilia. They're not going to the text and saying, what does this actually say? It's, let me go to this source. And keep in mind, it's not just the Bible or the Talmud. It's all the studies and so on that Daniel is pointing to. He's going there with a mindset, let me go here and be able to defend pedophilia from what I find. That's the goal. And the idea that this is the person whose analysis you should trust, when that's the goal. I'm going through various sources to defend pedophilia. It's like if I found out that someone was just looking for reasons to defend, child brides and child marriage and pedophilia, I think that's probably a person I should not trust when he's doing the research and so on. And then, as we've seen in this debate, it's totally correct. You should not trust this guy because he's misrepresenting everything in order to defend child marriage. Pretty creepy stuff.
Absolutely. I want to quickly address here one thing. Gene Apologetics said, why are Christians always appealing to people like Derek and Ridvan who hate religion, especially Derek, who mocks the Bible for a career?
How many times have we answered this?
Many times. And I don't even want to answer the question here. I just want to point out one thing here. I know Derek, his ideas personally about religion. Derek doesn't hate religion. Right. I know that for a fact. In fact, I had this conversation with him yesterday, I think, on the phone. And I personally, I don't hate religion. I have explicitly said that I don't hate religion on many occasions. I even made a video about this. So I'm not sure where people are getting these ideas from.
Yeah. And I'll just add, if someone did absolutely hate religion, but he believes that marrying children is wrong, guess what? I agree with him. In other words, you could take the most anti-religious person in the world. If he agrees that marrying children is wrong, then guess what? On this topic, we agree. And we could actually sit down and say, hey, we all agree on this. We disagree with the people who support child marriage. So no idea. We've talked about this a million times before. We don't have this mindset where I can only associate or have a discussion with someone who someone who agrees with me on everything. That's a modern idea where everything has to be clicked. Everyone has to be clicked up into groups, and never shall the groups interact or have any sort of reasonable discussion and so on. We don't have that idea. So stop applying it to us.
Yeah, especially right now, in this environment right now, we are allies. Once we have the things that we disagree on, or that we agree on out of the way, we can come to dealing with each other and slaughtering each other. That's a whole different issue. Question for David said, is it a Aaron Ryder said, is it a well-established fact, I can't read anymore, that the Virgin Mary was not a Levite, but a descendant of the tribe of Judah, or is that not 100% verifiable? P.S. Lots of respect and admiration for your work and ethics.
Yeah,
David probably doesn't know a thing. So
I don't know what kind of. I mean, you have genealogies in Matthew and Luke, but just keep in mind that with those genealogies, you can trace. When you trace a genealogy, you're saying this person to this person to this person to this person to this person. An actual genealogy, if you trace it back, is that's why they call it a family tree, right? you'd have tons of people, so you can actually be both. So.
Yeah. Zagan said Muhammad, Satan, partnership, friendship, yes. Mnag said, I've had several arguments with Christians, and their argument is that Mary was a virgin, yet she gave birth, and so that's why it's okay that she was only 13. Your thoughts?
One, we have no source saying she was 13. There's no reliable authoritative source on the age of Mary. You could read the Bible and think she was 13. You could read the Bible and think she was 18. There's no. It doesn't say. So again, we have to compare this, right? When we have the Quran, right? I mean, when we have the Hadith, for Muslims who would deny this, like Kenny Bomer, who thinks that she wasn't 9, they say one thing, but we got the Hadith at our disposal. Your Hadith say this, right? It's very strange to say, hey, you have dozens and dozens and dozens of references to Mary being 9, and then we don't know how old Mary. We don't know how old Mary was. So Aisha was 9. We don't know how old Mary was, and therefore we're just going to say she was 13. You can't.
You see, this is a fundamental source. This is a shortened version where they removed all the repetitions, but this is all the Hadiths in Sahih Bukhari in English. You can open this. This is a fundamental source in Islam, and you can see here repeatedly that it says she was 9, 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 she was 6 and she was 9, she was 6 and she was 9, she was 6 and she was 9, or she was 7 and she was 9, whatever it is. People keep bringing up this whole Rebecca's age and Mary's age. Show me one single source in the fundamental texts
Yeah,
of
that's
Judaism and Christianity where that is actually mentioned.
yeah. So the basic approach you have is according to dozens and dozens of Muslim sources, Aisha was 9. But since this is the approach of Muslim apologists, since we don't know how old Mary was, we could just say anything we want. Okay, you could say whatever you want, but then you apply it to us like, haha, you have this problem because we'll say she's 12. Well,
Yeah.
it's
You
not the same
see?
thing, guys. This is stupid.
Yep. So was Islam. Question and answers right about those marriages. I mean, Islamic sources are agreed with you guys. Why do Muslims say lies about it? Yes.
What was that?
I don't know.
Questions and answers right about those marriages. I mean, Islamic sources are agreed with you guys. Why do Muslims say lies about it? Well, because this is used as a criticism, right? It's used, there is a natural desire to defend your position against criticism. Well, if you're being criticized because your sources say that your prophet had sex with a 9-year-old girl, you got 2 basic ways to defend that. Either defend the practice, defend child marriage. That's what Daniel Hakikachu did, or deny your sources, say it didn't happen. It's actually misrepresented. It was made up. That's what Kenny Bomer did. So there's no secret, there's no mystery as to why they would deny it. Of course, that is one of the 2 main ways you could get around the problem. But there is this. Yeah. People have a tendency to defend their positions. Everyone does. So.
Absolutely. So Timothy who said there are some things in life that don't need studies to demonstrate they are terrible ideas.
That's true.
That is true. I remember this brings me back to when I first had my discussion with Daniel Kikichu. He was asking me why I don't have any studies which show that slavery is bad. And yeah, interesting stuff, man. Apollos Christian Apologetics said most people sleep at night is an abstract matter. That whole abstract thing should become a new meme. I will cut that out. I will do that. Mnek said, what are your thoughts on the naked boy found with Jesus when he was arrested? What?
People, they were trying to capture Jesus' followers. They grabbed a guy and he pulled away and ran away naked. So, oh, you see? Yeah. I guess the claim is that. So this is when the soldiers come to capture Jesus, and it says in the Gospel of Mark they grabbed one, but he pulled away and ran away. So they grab him by the garment, he runs away naked. And so I guess this. Oh, you see, it's the same thing.
I haven't even thought about the correlation.
This is getting stupid.
That's interesting. Wardoon said, is Daniel deceptive or incompetent in misquoting studies? Does he honestly think that child marriage is a good thing and not harmful to the child? No, here's the thing. It doesn't really matter what to Daniel Kikichu, it doesn't matter what he thinks and what he believes, how he feels. What matters to him is Islam says this is okay. Therefore, I must somehow argue that this is okay and that this is good. So with that in his mind, with that idea, with that bias, he goes into studies and selectively picks whatever he can to justify that idea and does a terrible job at that. He clearly shows to everybody that he doesn't he either doesn't read those studies and doesn't understand them, or he does read and understand them and deliberately misrepresents them in order to make his point to the public audience. And I'm still conflicted here. I still do not know what is true, whether he actually doesn't read and understand, or whether he deliberately takes these things out of their context to twist and lie to the audience. Either of those things makes his position terrible.
Yeah, either way, either he doesn't know what he's talking about or he's deliberately being deceptive. It's the same thing we've said about Allah in the Quran, right? Like whoever's responsible for the Quran, when you say that the Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah, or when you say that the Trinity is made up of Allah, Jesus, and Mary, who just work together as 3 really close gods, you either don't know what you're talking about, or you do know what you're talking about and you're deliberately being deceptive. So you're ignorant or you're deceptive. The author of the Quran is either ignorant or deceptive. Daniel Hakikachu is either ignorant on these topics or he's deceptive. Either way, not someone you should be listening to.
So you're saying Daniel Hakikachu is basically like Allah.
Yeah. I mean, watch this debate. I mean, think, because we all have kids, but Dads with kids must be feeling furious
Yeah.
when they hear this stuff.
Yeah. Jimmy has said pre-modern Christians did condemn adult-child relations. Martins do not sexually abuse children. The language of early Christian sexual ethics. Yeah.
And it's not the most important thing in the world to say, who said this a long time ago? We can learn over time that things are bad. Once you learn and realize that something is bad, then you have to have this principle in your head. Oh, now that I know it's bad, now we can't do it. It doesn't matter if people did it 1,000 years ago. If you've figured out that it's bad, then okay, now you have a moral obligation to not do that because now you know that it's bad. But in Islam, it's nope, guy did it 14 centuries ago, and so we got to do it.
That was Mike's point at some point in the debate, which was it doesn't really matter, whether people in the past condemned it or not. We know, we have learned that it is wrong. It's harmful. Therefore, we should no longer do it. It is a harmful practice. We learn principles and learn to apply those principles, and by those principles, we learn that this is harmful and wrong. But Daniel Kikichu keeps going back to, well, give me a source where somebody in the past said that this is wrong. So nobody said it's wrong. Therefore, it's okay. Therefore, it's good. That is very idiotic. It's unbelievable to me that somebody like Daniel Kikichu, with such an arrogance about education and research and all that, comes with such an approach and insists on that. Incredible. IP. Oh, we haven't asked this to IP. IP, do you remember when I talked to you before the debate and bet he would bring up Isaac and you said he wouldn't do something that illogical? Funny, I did the same thing. Just days before the debate, I said, oh, by the way, Daniel might bring up this and this because Muslims like to bring up that objection. And he was like, really? That would be stupid. That's what he said to me.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because it's along the same lines as the terrible idea of actually debating this. It's a terrible idea for him to debate this because even though this may be convincing to his group of followers, it's absolutely abhorrent to everyone else who's watching, who will now be pushed further away from Islam. So this is an obstacle to dawah. But there's something similar when they bring up Isaac and Rebecca and say that Rebecca was 3. It's a similar thing where that may be convincing to your fans who are completely ignorant and have no idea what the real evidence is. They may, when you tell them, yeah, she was 3, they may all go, okay, she was 3, because they've been trained to mindlessly agree with whatever you say, not to do any actual research into the topic. But from the perspective of everyone else, when everyone else has, you just said Rebecca was 3, dude, we cannot take you seriously anymore. So he's strong in the eyes of his followers, but he just massively discredited himself in the eyes of everyone else by almost every point he brought up.
Yeah, somebody here is posting stuff like flying horses are not real. The moon never split in two. Crazy stuff. I hope somebody will call the police on you. And let's see. The Shellskin said that was a joke, by the way. There is no question you won. Yeah, I think he was aware of that. Yeah. Addison Weir said, IP, are you going to do longer videos? I read that already when he was here. I read that too. Madigal said, the police is looking for a pedophile. According to DSM-5, this is non-cultural and non-lawful. It's just pedophilia.
Yeah, I made in a discussion with Al Fadi last year. We went through the DSM-5. That's the standard work in psychology for diagnosing mental health disorders, and Muhammad meets all of the criteria for pedophilic disorder.
Yeah. So
he would be classified as a pedophile according to the DSM-5.
And one of the interesting things is Daniel Kikichu actually brings this up and says, it is being normalized in the West as a mental disorder, and they don't even call it pedophilia if it's like marriage consummation after puberty and all of that. He's being incredibly stupid and appealing to a concept in psychology that has nothing to do with what we are actually talking about, which is that is about the terminology of pedophilia and what exactly pedophilia is technically used for, at what age it would be pedophilia, and whether pedophilia is a mental disorder where people who are into little children have this obsessive attraction to little children or not. That is a completely separate issue and has very little to do with what we are actually talking about, which is that marrying children is harmful, and he advocates for it. His prophet Muhammad did it, and it is horrible. Whether it is a mental disorder or not, whether it is technically called pedophilia or something else, has nothing to do with the actual point here.
This is it's still weird that this is a debate that we're having in the 21st century, that that there are people who are defending this. And guys, don't miss the overarching problem this creates for Muslims. This I mean, the fact that Muhammad had sex with a little girl. The Quran claims that Muhammad is the pattern of conduct for Muslims. Muhammad is the pattern of conduct. Who is this guy? He saw a little girl and said, "Give me that body."
Yeah.
He saw a little girl and said, "Give me that body." Like, it's kind of case closed, right?
Yeah. Warrior said, "What is your name, apostate prophet?" That's a weird question. It's like saying, "What is your name, David?"
Yeah. Why is my name? Oh! Because
My
that's the name my
name-
parents gave me, just
Yeah.
like AP.
Yeah. Carlo Magno TV said, the true test of a Muslim's faith is whether you are willing to defend having sex with a prepubescent girl is okay. And we all know Daniel Hikikichu is an extremely faithful Muslim apologist and has thus done a terrible job. Thanks, everybody, for witnessing this brutal stuff.
I have a final word whenever you're ready.
Do your final word now. Speak.
These Dawa lies have got to go. That's it.
Good. Good. Fantastic. Now that we have that out of the way, thanks everybody for watching. Let me know what you think. And you're not allowed to think anything at all except that IP did an amazing job. I personally am not allowed to think anything either, except to think it was fantastic. It was a brilliant demonstration of why Islam is horrible. IP did an amazing job, and I would ask you to also put this in the comment section and say, "Wow, I'm amazed. He did an amazing job. Fantastic."
Hey, yo, IP. Someone just posted
you just called me IP, man.
Oh, AP. You guys need to get significantly different names.
Whenever I say IP, I think it sounds like I have to.
No, IP. AP, IP. We all P. Abdul said, check out Ali Dawa's new video supporting secret second wives. We've already talked about that, but yeah, we might need to. I don't know if you're planning on going live on Saturday, but that would be a pretty good topic for Saturday.
Yeah, we will do that. We will talk about that next, probably. The topic is that Ali Dawa with Mohammed Hijab and other Muslim apologists argue that there is nothing wrong with having a secret second wife or even third wife or even fourth wife while being married to somebody who is completely unaware of those other wives. So you have a wife, you have a family, and you go and you also secretly marry other women while keeping that completely keeping that a secret from your first wife, who knows nothing, who thinks, "Oh, you are my only man, my only husband." You're like, yeah, totally. And you go to your other wives to have sex with them.
And they were saying it is perfectly acceptable in Islam to just lie, to flat out lie to your wives about even having your other wives. You're allowed to, and they were lecturing. They're sitting there with 4 Muslim women and basically telling them you need to stop being so selfish. You need to stop being so selfish and wanting this man all to yourself. And it was the attitude seems to be, we're men and we're made to want lots of women, and you're a woman and you're made to want one man. So you need to put what you want aside so we can do what we want. And interesting stuff. But yeah, we need to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. Cheating is okay as long as you do it with a marriage. Yep, and a promise to Allah. Yep. All right. Thanks everybody for joining this amazing show today. I think this was very, very important. This debate is seriously the best thing that I've seen in terms of dealing with people like Daniel Kikachu. I'm not exaggerating. I love it. My expectations were high, and it's even better than I expected. I'm very impressed. I myself could have never done a great job, something remotely as good as Michael did on that day with Daniel Kikachu. David would have done a terrible job. David wouldn't have done something as amazing as IP.
I would not have done nearly as good a job. I would have found like probably 2 or 3 studies or something like that, cited them. There's no way I would have gone through everything on the topic. But that's what IP does. It's like, it's very interesting. So you'll have, people saying Christmas is pagan and so on. We hear this all the time. Don't know where it actually comes from. What's the evidence? But IP will like read everything that's ever been written on the origins of Christmas, and they'll say, actually, this didn't have pagan origins. That's a myth. And I've read everything on the topic. So show me something that actually goes along with you. But he's been doing that for years. Anything someone brings up and that he wants to study, he will go out and read everything on that topic. And
you know what's funny? I do this thing. I told my wife about this as soon as I learned how he thinks and operates, how he deals with stuff that he hears online or from other people. What I do all the time is I see claims made by people, and then I'm like, is that true? And then I immediately go online and start gathering some of the research, some of the sources, and then I skim through it, and I'm like, okay, I got the idea. Yeah, it's nonsense. Obviously, nonsense, stupid. And then I never talk about it again. But as David just explained, he does an extreme form of that. Instead of just looking it up and thinking, yeah, okay, nonsense, whatever. He goes and he's like, okay, here's the source, here's that source, here's that source. Let me read this through all the pages and highlight this and this and that, and then that and that. And then when did that start? And how did that start? And who started it? And what does it actually say? What do all these other sources say about this? And so on. And he completely destroys it.
And of course, the Dawa fans are looking at this. They only have one way of reacting to things, so they're going to respond by insulting him, talking trash to them, not realizing, guys, if you had an ounce of common sense, you would be trying to befriend him really quickly and be as nice as possible so that he focuses on someone else who's annoying him. But if you become the guys who are annoying and insulting him, my goodness, have you not learned your lesson after that debate that we just watched? Yeah. But I don't know. See what happens.
He made him look like an idiot, and it was amazing. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for being here again. David, we will be live again on Saturday. And is there anything else that you want to tell the people of the world?
Stay away from child marriage.
Absolutely. And
stay away from Islam.